I have a list of 42 questions for you.
Thank God.
39 of them involve license.
All right. Okay, let's get started. I'd like to call to order this regular meeting of the Stillwater Planning Commission this Tuesday, April 7th, 2015. Item 1 on the agenda, under land use items for discussion and possible action, item A, 2A, Trittenbach Development, map amendment, rezoning PZ-15-1933, request for review and approval to rezone 17 lots currently zoned RMI, multifamily intermediate, and commercial general CG to the requested HR high-rise on properties addressed as 416, 418, 421, 422, 424, 501, 502, 503, 504, 505, 508, 511, and 516 South Ramsey Street, 502 and 506 South Hester Street, and 807 and 809 West 4th Avenue. Ms. Evans.
Okay, I'm glad you read all those addresses because I'm not going to repeat it.
Like I was reading Keno numbers.
Patty Evans, Development Services. The properties are located on 4th Avenue. This is 4th. And on Hester here, and on Ramsey. And of course, the high hatched areas are the properties involved. The existing zoning is RMI, multifamily intermediate. The requested zoning is HR high-rise. The adjacent zoning districts include the high-rise to the north, RTM, two-family and multifamily, CG, which is commercial general, CB, commercial business, and RMU, multifamily urban. The multifamily urban allows up to 50 dwelling units per acre. The high-rise allows up to 150 units per acre. And the permitted uses in the high-rise is accommodation, boarding, rooming houses, churches, mixed use, multiple family, and parking lots and garages. The findings include all the properties are located in the corridor redevelopment area. The high-rise zoning district is allowed in the corridor redevelopment area. High-rise is adjacent to the properties, and high-rise is not compatible with the C3 plan. Are there any questions?
Any questions for staff? All right, thank you. Okay, so I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing, and I will ask for anyone who would like to speak in favor of this request to please come forward, state your name and address, please.
Good evening, Kelly Harris with Keystone Engineering, located at 923 South Lowry, here representing the developers tonight. As Patty said, this is the area that we are requesting to go to high-rise. I imagine that you can envision what we have planned for this area, and if you just have any questions.
Any questions for Kelly? Okay.
Are you sure, Mike?
Do you want me to ask you some questions, or?
It's kind of unknown territory here.
I'm assuming that you're doing a high-rise complex immediately north that's already zoned this, and it's going to look similar and compatible with that.
Yes.
So, I'm waiting for any public comment before I follow with anything.
I would reserve a right then to come back and address any comments that do come up.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor of this request?
My name is Larry Brown with Runbroker Place Real Estate Solutions, 1020 North Boomer, here in Stillwater, representing the applicant and the property owners. Again, as Kelly stated, here to answer any questions that you might have. We do think this is a compatible zoning based upon the HR district a little further to the north, and then a budding commercial district, so you're not running into that density issue with residential properties either to to the south or to the west. So again, we appreciate your consideration. I'd be glad to answer any questions that you might have, and if there are none at this point, I'm certainly available as the hearing progresses.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor of this request? Seeing none, is there anyone that would like to speak in opposition to this request? Oh, please, go ahead, come on.
I'm Dorothy Story, and I live at 4815 West 11th Avenue. I own property at 813 West 4th Street, and I am here, and I was confused. I'm not sure whether I am in favor or just my position, or what I wanted to put before you tonight was that if you do approve this request, my property is absolutely concurrent, and next to it's kind of like a little jogged piece that you've taken out. And I think that if you do approve this request, it would be appropriate that my property would be rezoned exactly like all the other area that is there. And that's what I had to say.
Okay. So if that does happen, if this gets recommended to the city council and they do rezone this, for you to rezone your property, you would have to make application to the city to do the same.
Separately?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yes, it's not part of this application.
You can't do it all at the same time.
It's not like that, no.
Okay, well, I don't know, so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But if you want to contact the city staff, the city planning staff, they can walk you through the process.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so is there anyone here that would like to speak in opposition to this request? All right, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. We'll ask for staff's alternatives.
The alternatives are to accept the findings and recommend that the City Council approve the proposed map amendment as presented, find that the map amendment is not appropriate use for the property, and do not recommend that the City Council approve the map amendment, and find that additional information is needed prior to making a recommendation, and table the request to a certain date.
Commissioners, any questions for Patty or any discussion?
I move we accept staff findings and recommend approval.
Second.
All right, there's been a motion and a second to make a recommendation to the city council. Let's vote. And that recommendation is made with 5 votes yes and 1 no choice.
Oh, I did.
Item B, under land use items for discussion and possible action. Awad Construction LLC, map amendment rezoning PZ-15-1934. Request for review and approval to rezone property addressed as 1411 North Hightower Street, 1312 North Henderson Street, and 1324 North Henderson Street from Agriculture A and Residential Large Lot Single Family RSL to Residential Small Lot RSS to create single-family residential lots. Ms. Evans.
Thank you. The property is located along Hightower. This is a platted right-of-way. It is not improved. That's Wilshire. And then this is also a platted right-of-way that is not improved, and that is Henderson. The 2 lots here on Henderson are part of the Evergreen subdivision. The current zoning is agriculture on the large miscellaneous lot and large lot single family on the 2 lots. The requested zoning is RSS, small lot single family. The adjacent zoning districts, Evergreen subdivision is RSL, large lot single family. Currently, this is large lot single family, and then all the other yellow is small lot single family, the requested zoning. And I might point out that later on this evening, you will be hearing a map amendment on this property also. The permitted uses in RSS is a conventional single-family home, and residential designed or constructed manufactured homes. Our findings show that RSS, small lot single family, is compatible with the C3 plan and that RSS it is adjacent to the properties. Are there any questions?
I have a quick question for Patty. On the street that fronts it is a partially half-paved street at the moment, and then there's an unpaved
Yes,
street.
this high tower is only half
The
paved.
developer be required to finish out the second line, the
Yes.
full access on
when
high
they
tower?
when they develop.
And what about Henderson and the right-of-way to the north?
They are going to have to provide some type of access to these properties before they develop. They probably won't have to do Wilshire because he's taken his driveway off of High Tower.
Would he have to have a secondary exit out of, or just a single off of high tower?
That's something that the engineer has been discussing, our development engineer. And we don't know whether the street needs to go out here, if it needs to go to Wilshire, if he just needs to front the streets. He's going to have some way to get to it,
Okay.
so. Anything else?
All right, thank you. Okay, we'll go ahead and open up the public hearing on this request and ask for anyone who would like to speak in favor of this request to come forward.
Roger Ghost, 113 East 8th, on behalf of Mr. Awad. We're asking for a zoning, not improvement plans or anything else, but if you don't mind, let me try to give you a little quick history so you can understand. There's a application pending right now for a minor subdivision on this crosshatched green area, for a minor subdivision for 2 lots that face High Tower, the same size as the ones to the south. And then Mr. Awad's personal house is going to go back here with a flag lot out to High Tower. So we're in the process of designing the other half street of paving for High Tower. The other thing is we've got to go down here and get the sewer and bring it up to serve these. So water's there, but we need to do the half street. That's in the process, hopefully, as soon as we get the minor subdivision approved. Paving of Wilshire is still on the table, whether that happens or not, and there's no plans at this time to do anything with these back 2 lots. We're asking for RSS. Down the agenda, you have another application for this property to the south of Mr. Albright's. And then Mr. Fritz, Ben Fritz owns most of this up in here, Evergreen Estates, I think that's the name of it. We've all been talking, and we'd like to enter into an agreement, covenant between the 3 of the parties that 2,000 square foot's the minimum lot or minimum house size on any of those lots. And the big concern with the neighborhood here in Oak Park, Oakdale, is that somebody's going to come in there and build small houses. That's not anybody's plan. So to protect all of the properties by the city commission, we'd like to have a covenant on that. So otherwise, basically the RSS gives us 5-foot setbacks on the side yard and 20 foot in the front. Any questions?
What about, and I know it's just a rezone, it's probably too far in advance, but what about the north paving of High Tower? Would you just be looking at paving up to Wilshire South?
Mr. Awad's paving the frontage on his property.
Okay.
Whoever does the rest of it to the north, that should be their deal. And we don't know for sure yet what's going to happen to Wilshire. There's a drainage issue on that one that needs to be resolved.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor of this request?
Good evening. My name is Frank Lewis. I live at 514 Greenbrier Circle, David. Here in Stillwater, I represent the purchasers of the subdivision that this is going to affect. There's 41 lots in there, and I see we are for this for this and for the RSS and the larger home one that the plans for this, for these purchasers and the developers are to put larger homes on there. We're going to do the 2,200 to 2,650 square feet on the lots, the rest of these lots that'll be developed in there, David. I see any questions? We don't close for another few weeks, but we're getting close. One quick point while I'm here. You guys did an outstanding job when you had the large crowds in here I watched all this televised, but you guys really did a really great job.
I believe you're off the agenda,
Yeah,
and
you
that's
got-
against the state law, so
Yeah, follow-
I appreciate,
You bet, Mike.
I'm just sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor of this request?
My name is Ben Fritz. I do own the 43 lots around this. We are in favor of it. I do like it was my intention too that we get this, a larger home restriction over the whole thing. That's been the whole concern. I also live out there, want to protect that. We've tried to build larger houses and enlarge some of the ones that are there. I put in Denver Court going north and Young Street going north. All of those had 1850. Anyway, so I'm very much in favor of it. Thank you.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure. Absolutely.
If it's out of line, tell me, but how do you guys plan on setting that in? I mean, we've talked about large lots and stuff like that.
Well, it is platted.
Is it a covenant, or is it going to be?
It's platted now, and as I understand it, Roger's going to do that. There's two ways to do it, at least two ways. There's always at least two ways, but in the first way is to put each one to put in their individual unit. We'll all have a restrictive covenant in our, like Evergreen Estates would have a restrictive covenant, and the second part, Jay Albright's piece of Oakdale Park would have a covenant on it for that. Or we can enter into an agreement with all of them in one piece. And there's a couple of odd lots out there. Lee Jackson has one. There's one more out of town. I don't think those will be a problem. I think they'll all agree to that. I mean, that's what they're looking for too, and what they're concerned about.
Okay.
That they don't get smaller homes in there.
Okay.
Even if somebody were to come in, I mean, that's what I was reminded of was, somebody could buy that from me and turn it into RSS as well instead of RSL. And they want that restriction on there. So anyway, any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor of this request? Seeing none, is there anyone that would like to speak in opposition to this request?
How about just discussion?
You have to come up here and please give us your name and address and discuss away.
Mac Butler, 2309 East Will Rogers Drive. I live in Oakdale Park, okay? So just for clarification and questions, is that a time to do this?
Sure.
So the existing home that I live in, I believe the covenants and all those say RSS. I'm going to nod if that's correct, okay? So we're, I guess, it wasn't supposed to be that, but that's what it was in the initial covenants. And they said this is nothing more than the extension is nothing more than what we live in now, I guess. Is that a question? Is that correct?
Actually, it's a larger houses than you have specified
Okay.
in Oakdale Park, right?
We okay me doing this?
Let me ask the attorney for a clarification here. If we pass the zoning, it did not necessarily pass this requirement of square footage.
Right.
So therefore, we're being told something that may or may not occur in the future. And so if the zoning is passed, what is the minimum square foot home just based by right under the zoning? Am I correct in that?
I think the code doesn't specify
not
square
admitted.
footage.
If the zoning is approved, recommended here and approved to the city council, the property would then become RSS, which is the small lot, single-family zoning district, which Mr. Gose indicated what the common setbacks are, 5 foot from each side, 20, 25, front, rear. The size of the home is not dictated by the zoning, the size of the lot is dictated by the zoning. So whatever size footprint of the house, and based on private restrictions that the city does not enforce. I will repeat, the city does not enforce private restrictions. That is the discussion between the developers. Whatever size home can be built within that setback without extending and encroaching into the setback would be the size that could fit in whatever size
So when
lots
we,
they are.
if
50
we
by
pass
100 or
the
whatever.
zoning change without more activities between private parties, which the city does not enforce, they could build a 1,500 square foot home as long as it fits on the lot with those setbacks.
That is correct. The city does
Okay.
not dictate the size of the home. Also, we are not authorized to put conditions on zoning. So there cannot be a recommendation of approval as long as the covenant is filed. We cannot do that. We are prohibited from it as well.
And just to clarify, our code used to say that you could only build a certain percentage of a lot, but we don't say that anymore. You could build out to the setbacks if you wanted to and cover the entire lot with a house, if you so choose. Whereas used to, I think there was like this, I remember.
There was a lot coverage.
Lot coverage percentage, you could only cover
Included in most zoning
35% of the
districts.
lot or 40, yes. So we don't have that anymore.
And that included all buildings, including any accessories, above-ground pools, anything like that. So it was a total accumulation.
So what I'm doing is responding to what you said, and the response is back. If we pass this zoning, we're not putting any restrictions on the size of the homes, except that it has to have that setback.
It has
They-
to fit within the
Yeah.
allowed minimum lot size
Yes.
with the setbacks. Correct. Any other questions while I'm?
So you can come back up here now that we've muddied the water for you here.
No, that's good. I need it, buddy. So, just being a homeowner, and I think like everybody else, we don't want to lose the value of our property. We want, if anything, to increase. And so if there is no binding, and I know we've got a gentleman's agreement, and we've talked about this, but what is our position if we want to make sure that they meet those requirements as far as footage? Or is there any?
I don't think there is in this format. It would have to be an agreement outside between private parties and the developing parties.
So Jay and I can walk outside and sign a paper and saying we're good? I'm saying that jokingly, but I mean, basically, we're getting together with the rest of the homeowners, and there's some of them in here agreeing that we're okay with this if we are. And I'm putting a question out to any of the other homeowners that are in here in Oakdale. So
It would be with you and the other property owners could get together and have some restrictive covenants that would be with you. You could, but it has nothing to do with the city. The city doesn't enforce restrictive covenants. The city doesn't help you make restrictive covenants. There's no, guidelines for restrictive covenants. So it's really you and the other property owners coming up with that.
And if they violate those restricted covenants, then the city does not follow up with anything. My understanding is you'd have to follow up with a lawsuit in court.
So the covenants would need to be changed. Yes?
It'd have to be it's
Amended,
yeah,
right?
Yeah,
Yes.
established.
Established.
So yeah, if you wanted to do that, it would have to be an agreement with Mr. Albright or Mr. Fritz or.
Right. So we have an Oakdale Park set of covenants. So do we work with them to accept our covenants and make adjustments on that?
It's up to, yeah.
Is that right?
Sorry. Yeah, you need.
Sorry. Okay.
Yeah, I assume he's directing to him, but he pulled his head to the back, which is fine with me. He can point whatever direction he went to, but I assume that was to us.
Oh, yes.
And the answer to the question is yes. You have to work with them.
And now that there's multiple property owners, that everybody owns their own house in this Oakdale Park, everybody there would have to somehow come together
Sure.
if you were going to have restrictive covenants that were partnered with all of them. But there again, that has nothing to do with us. So we're just considering the zoning here this evening.
Okay. So asking them a question, should I have any more questions unofficially that you could nod your head at?
Answer that question as a public meeting, no, we cannot do that.
Sure.
I'm going to talk to you so they can hear it.
Yes, I fully understand that. I have no problem with that.
I think the neighborhood, okay, the Albright, the AWOD, and the Evergreen, if there's a covenant between those three parties of 2,000 square feet signed and filed before the city council meeting, then they probably don't need to show up and yell at that meeting. Could rest assured that that document's filed. If not, their recourse is to show up at the city council meeting. This body's a recommending body to the city council. This Oakdale covenants for phase 1 and phase 2, or the front end and the back end, that's a whole nother matter.
Yes.
But I think if we have this back end of this thing all signed and sealed, they should be comfortable. I mean, it's not going to hurt them. So that's what I think we're offering. Okay.
I think that's a good process.
Thank you, Mr. Goodson. All right, is there anyone else that would like to speak on this request? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and ask for staff's alternatives.
Again, you may accept staff findings and recommend approval, or you can to not recommend approval to the city council, or may continue or table the request. Do you have any questions for me?
Thanks.
I move we accept findings and recommend the city council approve the proposed map amendment as presented.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second to approve this. Let's vote. And that is approved with 6 votes yes. Item C, James and Ann Berry, map amendment, rezoning PZ-15-1935, request review and approval to rezone property addressed as 2302 West 8th Avenue from residential small lot single family RSS to commercial shopping district CS. Mr. Coots.
Tom Coots, Development Services. We said the application is for a piece of property located at the northwest corner of 8th Avenue and Western Street. It's just south of the Wicklow Commercial Development. The property is currently zoned RSS, which is residential small lot single family. It's surrounded on the east, south, and west sides by the RSS district and all residential all around. North side is the CS commercial shopping, and as said, the Wicklow commercial area. Request is also to the CS commercial shopping, which is the same as the Wicklow commercial area. For clarification, the CS district commercial shopping allows for the following uses: bed and breakfast, hotel, motel, beverage services, educational services, financial institutions or services, food services, freestanding self-services, information, mixed use, personal laundry services, personal storage and warehousing, professional and administrative offices and services, and retail trade. And then a litany of other uses with a specific use permit, which goes back through public hearing if that's the type of use that's chosen for the property. I have not, the applicant is representative is here today, but I do not know of any any plans for redevelopment to the property, so don't ask me what the plan is. All we know is that right now we have a request for a commercial shopping zoning district. Staff findings are that the C3 plan does recommend commercial uses along Western Street through this area for the properties fronting Western. So it is compliant with the C3 plan. Commercial shopping district is adjacent to the north, as I pointed out. This is a portion of a platted lot in a residential subdivision. We did find today that there are covenants for a portion of this platted subdivision, but they don't appear to apply to this particular lot. So, do you have any questions for me?
All right, thank you. We'll go ahead and open up the public hearing on this request. Is there anyone that would like to speak in favor of this request? Please come forward.
Roger Ghost, still at 113 East 8th. There are no plans for this lot. I think the Berries are trying to just get the highest and best use zoning on it, then probably list it for sale, to my knowledge. Any questions? Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor of this request? Is there anyone that would like to speak in opposition to this request? Please come forward, state your name and address, please.
Yes, my name is Betsy Showalter, and I live at 2402 West 8th. So if you look on the map, this is my house.
2 houses away.
Yes.
Okay.
And I don't know, can I ask Mr. Coots a question? Am I allowed to ask him a question?
Why don't you direct it up here?
Okay. My question is, has he been to the property? Has he been on West 8th Avenue? The street that we're talking about.
Okay. And for why, I guess, why are you asking?
Well, because I would like to know what his impression was of it, because as you can see, going east of Western here, this is an improved street. It's wide enough for 2 cars to pass, even when there's parking on the street. There are curbs on that street, whereas if you go down our little street, it's an unimproved road. There's barely room for 2 cars to pass. There are lots of trees. It's a very country kind of road. It's a lovely little road. There are families living all along the road. There are townhomes where children live. There are bikes up and down the street. People walk their dogs up and down the street. So it's a very quiet street. I can't imagine that this street is going to become some sort of outlet to a commercial.
Let me ask Mr. Coots a question. If this property is rezoned, and if the developer comes in and develops something that has, I'm assuming they'll have access on Western, but if they have any access on 8th, they'll have to improve the street. Is that correct?
Right now, we don't have any development plans, so I don't know how they're going to access the property. But if 8th was built as a public street, then I would have to say that, somebody wanted to access it, I would have to say that they would not have to rebuild the street because it's an existing public street.
That's an interesting comment back that I will remember. Okay. I don't have any other questions.
Can I go on?
Yes.
Yes, you may go on.
So in the findings, it says that West 8th is bound on the north by the Wicklow area, which it is. But I don't want anyone to get the impression that there's any access currently between this conglomerate of business stuff and our street. There is no access. The only access is to the townhomes, which are to the west of my property. So again, if he came down my street, I'm sure that once you go down the street, you have no idea that Wicklow is back there. I have worked very hard with the people at Wicklow to maintain our insulation from that apartment, offices, liquor store, whatever. But that would be destroyed if some development takes place on the lot in question. We would lose that comfort of our street, the safety of our street. And it is a residential area. You can see all the green. It's a residential area. The findings say there's sewer access. There's no sewer on 8th. There's no sewer line on 8th. Ours goes over to 9th Street. It'd have to be off of Western. I just feel like it's just the wrong thing to do. It's the wrong thing to have this incursion of this commercial property into this heretofore residential area. And I know the people who are making the application, they were my neighbors for years and years and years. They've not lived on the property for over a decade. So I understand that they want to maximize the return on their investment on their property, but I am really against the possibility that once that property goes commercial, then it's just, then the floodgates are open, and I'm really trying to preserve this residential area.
I hate to interrupt, I'm sorry. Could you pull the microphone closer to you?
Oh, so sorry. Do you have any questions for me? I've lived here since 1980. I've lived in that same house since 1980. And the street looks pretty much the same as it did when I moved here in 1980. It's just, it's a little street. I can't imagine the traffic that would be created. Maybe there's nothing planned now, but obviously, once it's become a commercial shopping area, then it can become a commercial shopping area. And I can't imagine with the progress going downtown, going north on Perkins, going east on 6th and west on 6th, that this is a linchpin to the commercial development of Stillwater, that this property has to become commercial shopping. Any questions for me?
Questions for Betsy? No. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak in opposition to this request? Please come forward and state your name and address, please.
Thank you for the opportunity to address this commission. My name is Robert Lee. My sister and I own the property at 2217 West 8th Street, which is the third house east of the proposed zoning change on 8th Street. My family has owned that property since 1955, I believe, when my parents purchased it and built their home there. Traditionally, this has always been a residential area, and today there is rarely an afternoon when there are not children playing in the street, on foot, on tricycle, on bicycle. There's a lot of child activity on that street. We would like to encourage this commission to deny or recommend denial of the rezoning request in anticipation of the additional traffic that a commercial zoning would bring to the area and the anticipated problems that go with that. Not only the number of traffic, but the trash, the speeding. Those things may or may not occur, but with a commercial rezoning, I would expect a commercial development to build in anticipation of customers or somebody seeing their commercial operation. Do you have questions for me?
Any questions?
I will tell you, I appear with a little bit of mixed feelings because I really feel like a property owner should be able to do what they want to with their property. But at the same time, I believe this commission exists to help regulate that and help marshal it. And thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in opposition to this request? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and ask for staff's alternatives.
Just real quick, we can accept staff findings and recommend approval to the city council. We can not recommend approval to the council, or we can continue or table it for more information. Do you have any questions for me?
I have a continuing question for you. This is in accordance with the C3 plan. Is the C3 plan, if you go further south, and I get my directions sometimes mixed up, further south, it calls for commercial further south of this location?
Yes, pretty much all the property is fronting on Western.
On the west side, or the west side and the east side?
This is both sides, actually.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioners, discussion?
I have a mixed reaction in my mind. having citizen input is very important in my mind in the decision. I do feel that the see-through plan is very important, but public input is very important. The direction I'm leaning is because we don't have a development plan this time. We don't know what the impacts would be to surrounding areas. My slight inclination is to go to item 2 and not approve this tonight. And that's discussion for someone else to say something if they want to say something.
I agree definitely with the public input side of it. I think that just naturally as the town progresses, areas progress, and granted, over the last 20 years, it has been a predominantly residential area. Over the last 10 or 15, it's started to change where Western's become more of a thoroughfare for people. And to me, going forward, it makes a lot more sense that it becomes the frontage on Western follows the comprehensive plan and becomes commercial. Just like on 6th Street or just like on 12th Street or just like on, a lot of that has started to change over.
I have a question for Tom. Is commercial shopping the least invasive commercial zoning that we have?
I would say that office zoning is.
Okay. So this is one step greater than office?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
I think 8th Street in that area is very, I don't know, it's different and awkward as compared to most of the city streets. In the way that it's built. And I can see where Mr. Showalter is coming from as far as traffic on that street. It doesn't seem to make sense to me. But I value the C3 plan and can see where the future's going, and then that may be a necessity in the future, but I don't know, it just doesn't seem.
The street is inadequate
Doesn't seem
for
to make
commercial.
sense.
I'll make a motion and see what goes. Unless you want to say something?
No. I think we're also making an assumption that they're going to use 8. And we don't know
Exactly.
that. We don't know. They don't have a development. We don't have anything. We don't know that they're going to do 8 or they're going to come off and change and go off of Western. So it's hard to say.
But once we pass the zoning,
It's
going to be whatever it's going to be, and that's my concern. Therefore, I make a motion. We find the map amendment is not appropriate use for the property based upon the impacts to the surrounding vicinity, and do not recommend the city council approve the map amendment.
I second that.
All right, there's been a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Let's vote. So, okay, we had 6 votes last time. I'm confused. We have people showing up that just vote on certain things.
You didn't vote, did it?
Didn't I? I pushed a button. See? You're not the only one.
I'm not the only.
Mr. Barth, would you like to vote yes or no?
I
Or
pushed
choice?
no. I pushed no. So that still, it approves with 4 votes yes and 2 votes no. So not, it's the motion
to
was
not
to not
approve.
recommend, yes.
We're not.
Right,
Not recommend.
yes, sorry.
I thought maybe I was confused.
No,
Okay.
the motion was to not recommend, so
Okay.
that motion to not recommend passed.
Passed.
Okay. Item D, Robert White, map amendment rezoning PZ-15-1936, request for review and approval to rezone property addressed as 702 East 14th Avenue from residential small lot, single family RSS to light industrial IL.
Good afternoon, Planning Commissioners. Aaron Baggerly, Development Services. The applicant has came in to rezone 702 East 14th Avenue as stated. This is a picture of the property here, this triangle piece. It is currently zoned RSS and is a legal non-conforming use. A little history on the property is this is the former Stillwater Public School bus garage. It was recently sold at auction, and the applicant purchased this lot. Like I said, it is a legal non-conforming use as currently is, as long as it is not dormant for more than 12 months consecutively, it can continue with the non-conforming use. It was formerly a bus garage. The location within the city is right here, 14th Avenue. You have Couch Park over here to the east across Alcott Drive. You have RSS to the south. You have a little bit of commercial shopping over here in the red. And this dark blue area here is the railroad track, and it is zoned light industrial IL, which the applicant is requested for a rezoning case. The findings for this property is light industrial is adjacent to the property, as I mentioned, with the railroad track. The C3 plan recommends low-density residential use for this area, and the current use is a legal non-conforming use. At this time, the applicant does not have any significant plans or any dedicated plans for this property. They're looking to move to IL to give them a little more freedom with the current Quonset hut building that is on the property. Are there any questions at this time?
Can you give us an idea what is appropriate under light industrial zoning?
Yes, sir. Light industrial has many things permitted by right. You can have accommodations, animal and pet keeping facility, beverage services, computer and electronic production, electronic equipment, appliance and component manufacturing, construction, food, beverage, and tobacco product manufacturing, food services, freestanding self-service facilities, information facilities like call centers, miscellaneous manufacturing, oil and gas industry services. That means services related to that, not drilling or fracking or anything to that effect. Personnel storage and warehouses, parking lot and garages, public administration and services, research and development type facilities and operations, telecommunications tower, transportation activities, very similar to what was there before, utilities, vehicle and equipment sales and services, warehousing and storage, wholesale and retail trade, and then a slew of specific use permits that would have to come back before you for approval.
Okay.
How tall of a building and what are the setbacks if we pass the zoning? Could be on this property.
Minimal setbacks for a side yard would be 30 feet for this property. It's a very small piece of property. Maximum height structure, the highest point, there is no height structure. And minimum rear yard would be 50 feet for residential. Basically, this property is pretty small. It has an existing building on it currently, and it'd be very difficult to develop the property without taking that building down.
Thank you.
Questions for staff? All right. We'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. Is there anyone that would like to speak in favor of this request?
Good evening, committee members. I'm Robert Bob White. I bought that building from the Stillwater school system, and that have plans to use it approximately like the school did. That building was built, it's a 40 by 80 foot, 20 foot high Quonset hut. It was built by, I believe, the Naval Reserve after World War II. It was changed hands, in my understanding, to the school district in 1952. They've used it for a multitude of operations, from working on buses to working on trucks for the school, Stillwater schools. Their lawn equipment to mow the yards for the school. And they have now moved to the, I believe, the Kicker building up north on Perkins Road, and to a bigger building. I bought it to look at possibly having monthly income. And like I say, the fact that it's completely on one side bumped by light industrial, and it seems natural that it would give the city a little more control over it, because as a non-conforming use, they do not have that much. And that's what it's always been. So I applied for that to facilitate going ahead and putting it up for rent. And the way it's structured, and there would not be anything else built there. There's not room for anything else, and that building will not be torn down. So I applied for that to bring it in line with maybe what the city would want to use it, would want to have it used for, and have a little more control. And I basically look at it as monthly income. Would answer any questions.
Can you give us your address for the record, please?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I'm Robert Bob White. I live at 1109 West 9th Avenue.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any questions for Mr. White?
I have a hard time understanding one of your statements, and maybe I don't understand it, but you're saying that by rezoning this, that the city will have more control than a non-conforming use. And I have the exact opposite of opinion in my mind. Once we rezone it, it can be used for several other purposes besides the current non-conforming use. So I don't understand that rationale.
Well, due to the physical size of it and the lot size and all, it cannot be anything else built there. So it really limits what could happen under light industrial. And basically, I look at it as renting it for non-conforming use, as the school system has done since 1952. And many of the things that are listed as approved under light industrial are really not able, that building is not able to be used for those things. So it's very limited in what it can be. And if this is not approved, I would continue to rent it out as non-conforming, which legally it can be. And so I feel that basically it gives the city more say due to the fact that it would be an actual zoned property.
I don't agree with your conclusion, but we'll go on with the public hearing.
I'm just trying to understand, I guess, along with Mr. Buchert's comments, are you trying to make it to where it would be a legal conforming use? Is that what I'm understanding you to say?
Well, basically, it would be zoned. At this point, it's non-conforming legally.
Right. But the uses, after you rezone it, the uses that would be allowed, that are the uses that you would like to use it for, would be legal then?
Well,
That's what you're
they're
saying.
legal now in non-conforming under what's been used in the past.
So you're just trying to do this to clean up a zoning issue for the city?
Well, yes.
That's how you see it, I think.
Well, that and the fact that it is surrounded on the east side by the same zoning. There are non-conforming businesses across the street from that.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak in favor of this request? Is there anyone here that would like to speak in opposition to this request? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and ask for staff's alternatives.
Staff's alternatives are accept the staff findings, recommend approval, do not recommend approval, or continue or table the motion. Is there any questions?
I have one quick question. On non-conforming uses, do they sunset? Is there a time limit on them, or as long as it's occupied for, it's not unoccupied longer than 12 months, they can continue
There is no sunset clause on non-conforming use unless the building is vacated for longer than 12 months, or the non-conforming use cease to exist for longer than 12 months, or if the building is destroyed in like a fire or something like that, where it is destroyed more than generally 50% of the building, then at that point, you cannot remodel or renovate the building back to that, or if you change it, the building more than 50% is generally.
Without reapplying for it.
Correct.
This is my first non-conforming use, legal non-conforming use. What exactly, with it being a bus barn blast, what exactly would he be able to use it for? Is there a set standard on exactly what he would be allowed to do inside that building? Could he work on cars?
Yes, considering that was the legal non-conforming use was more of a
Automotive?
automotive repair storage type area that the school system was using, that would be the type of operation that would continue to use as a legal non-conforming.
Jump up and correct one thing, just in case it makes a bearing on your decision. The comment about if the building were destroyed, most cities do have a thing about the 50% can't be rebuilt. Stillwater is a little different in that it basically a building can be rebuilt and the use reestablished so long as 12 months haven't elapsed since they rebuilt the building.
Thank you, Tom, for the clarification.
Any other questions for staff? Thank you.
Thank you.
Discussion, motion?
I'll make a motion that I find that the map amendment is not an appropriate use for the property based upon the impacts of the surrounding vicinity, and do not recommend the city council approve the map amendment.
I'll second that.
Okay, so there's been a motion and a second to not recommend this be rezoned to the city council. Let's vote. And that is approved with 5 votes yes. Again, approved, meaning to not recommend to the city council. The rezoning. Okay, item E. JJ and CM Albright trustee, map amendment, rezoning, PZ-15-1939. Request for review and approval to rezone property address 1299 North Jardeau Road from residential single-family large lot, RSL, to residential single-family small lot, RSS. Ms. Evans.
All right. Yes, the address to this is 1299 North Jardeau Road, although it does not front on Jardeau Road. Here's Jardeau, and this is Will Rogers Drive. So it kind of sets at the end of Will Rogers Drive, and this is Hightower. The property is Phase 2 of Oakdale Park. We do have a preliminary plat for it. The current zoning is RSL, large lot, single family, and the requested zoning is RSS, small lot, single family. And again, conventional single-family homes and residential constructed manufactured homes are the permitted uses for RSS. The findings include that the property is adjacent to RSS. RSS is compatible with the C3 plan, and it is part of the Oakdale Park with a preliminary plat. Are there any questions?
Questions? All right, thank you. We'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. Is there anyone that would like to come and speak in favor of this request?
Roger Gose on behalf of Mr. Albright and Kathy. Pretty much said it in the last one, but we're just trying to get things out there conform so the neighborhood can continue on. And any questions? Thank you.
No questions.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak in favor of this request? Is there anyone here that would like to speak in opposition to this request? Go ahead and close the public hearing and ask for staff's alternatives.
The alternatives are accept staff findings and recommend approval, to not recommend approval, or continue or table.
I move we accept staff findings and recommend approval.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second to make this recommendation. Let's vote. And that recommendation is made with 6 votes yes. Item 3, under plans, policies, ordinances for discussion and possible action. 3A, City of Stillwater Text Amendment PZ.14.1863 to create and apply a form-based code for the corridor redevelopment area generally identified as the area bordered by Hall of Fame, Main Street, 6th Avenue, and Washington Street.
All right. This is a form-based code. As you can see, it's going to be presented by myself and our planning manager, Aaron Backerly. We're going to tag team. The red outline shows the corridor redevelopment area. The City Council created this area in 2012, and they also adopted the corridor redevelopment plan. The area is located east and south of the OSU campus. There's OSU. The boundaries are Hall of Fame on the north. It comes down and zigzags along the east, just about half a block off west of Main Street. This area right here that abuts the corridor redevelopment area is part of the bid, so that's why we zigzag down to 6th. And then along 6th, we left out most of the commercial areas along 6th, and then went one lot west of Washington and back up to University, Knobloch, and Hall of Fame. The plan acts as kind of a comprehensive plan for this site, or for this area. It's the vision of the area, but it doesn't have any regulatory authorizations to it. The form-based code is the regulatory document that will guide the vision of the corridor redevelopment plan. Staff worked with the Citizens Committee to create the draft. In July of 2014, we introduced this to the home builders. On August 19th, 2014, we had a public meeting for all the property owners that had property within the corridor redevelopment area, and also those 300 feet from the boundary of the corridor. We had a good turnout. I think we had approximately 50 to 60 people. And through all of these introductions to the form-based code and so forth, we really didn't have any negative issues or comments. We introduced the form-based code to this body August 16th, and then to the City Council on December 15th. In mid-February, we provided hard copies of the draft at the Stillwater Public Library and our front desk at Development Services for public review. It was also on the city website. The news press, the O'Colly did advertised it, and we also used social media to try to get the message out. We had no comments from this outreach, public outreach. After we did the official notices, which we did so by sign, public notice in the news press, and by property owner letters, again within the corridor and within 300 feet of the boundaries, we got lots of calls. I had approximately 20 calls. I had 2 people come in. We sat down face to face and discussed it, and I've had 1 email. And the two questions that everybody had is, what is a form-based code, and what's it going to do to my property? I wanted to also point out that there are 400-plus communities in the U.S. that have some form of form-based code, either over the whole community or just a small area like we're proposing. Here in Oklahoma, the Pearl District in Tulsa, City of Tulsa adopted it approximately 2 years ago. And so that's really the only existing one, but the City of Norman is also working on a form-based code for the area adjacent to OU to the north. Okay, what is a form-based code? This slide is the Form-Based Code Institute's definition of a form-based code. Land development regulation that fosters predictable built results in a high-quality public realm by using physical form rather than separation of uses as the organizing principle for the code. Now, that's still a little confusing when we have people call in and say, what is a form-based code? So I'll try to put it a little bit layman's terms. A form-based code encourages mixed use with higher densities. It does have architectural standards, so looking at a building, you wouldn't know what kind of business, retail, maybe even light industrial. You could not tell what's in that business because we do have architectural standards. Iconic buildings are not allowed in the area. They have to conform to our architectural standards.
Cannot hear her. We can't hear her back here.
Oh. I'm sorry.
To the
Am I not
microphone
talking
close.
loud enough? I'm sorry. Okay, I'll try to talk louder. The form-based code also has an interaction between private and public streets, or the public realm, and how they support each other. The form-based code creates a sense of place where people can live, work, and play in the same area or neighborhood. The form-based code also creates destinations not only for the residents that live in the corridor redevelopment area, but also for the residents of the whole community. It also encourages different modes of transportation rather than a car. Now, how does it affect my property? It's not going to affect your property at the time the code comes into effect. In other words, you don't have to go back and conform to this code. The only time it'll come into effect is if you do extensive outdoor or outside remodeling or complete redevelopment. The Euclidean zoning is the type of zoning that the City of Stillwater currently uses, and it's the prevalent zoning type in the United States. With the Euclidean zoning, it has separation of uses. You have residential in one area of the town, maybe commercial in another area. We have industrial in the northeast part of town. So you have to, it's more designed for automobiles, and people are more dependent on those vehicles to get to whatever use you need. There is no interaction between public and private spaces, and the code is mostly text and defines the use. With the form-based codes, it embraces a mixture of uses, it's designed for people, has strong interaction between public and private spaces, it has multi-modes of travel, and the code includes text, graphics, tables, and photographs, so it's easier to understand. And now I will turn it over to Aaron.
Thank you, Patty. As Patty was giving you a quick overview of the difference between the form-based code and Euclidean zoning, I'm going to dive into more of the fun details, in the weeds type of things for form-based codes. The elements of form-based code, there are 5 elements in a form-based code. You have the regulating plan, the public standards, building standards, the administration, which is what staff does, and then definitions. I love definitions. And each of these play an integral part within the form-based code. The regulating plan, that's where it regulates the development of the redevelopment corridor. It has the location of zoning transects. I will get into zoning transects a little bit later, but that's the new zoning map for form-based codes. The public standards, it specifies the standards for the public realm. And the public realm includes streets, the sidewalks, the bicycle lanes, the area, the public spaces where the public will be. Form-based code really likes to have a walkable area, an area that is less car dependent, more pedestrian and bicycle friendly. And the public standards includes, road widths, sidewalk for the position of bike lanes, street trees, public infrastructures, water, sewer, electrical lines, all the good stuff, all the expensive stuff. The building standards, it will regulate the building form, the configuration, the materials, the type of glazing or glass, the minimum and maximum standards for glass frontages on buildings, and the material types will really regulate more to kind of get a consistent form of building, but one that, as Patty said, you can't really tell the difference as to, if it's a light industrial or a cafe out front, it kind of looks the same because it's going to be mixed use in a building. It will not be only commercial in a building, or it can be, but the goal is to have mixed use to create different types of interactions among living, work, and play in the same area. The administration, that is the application process, the review process that streamlines the development process. The administration side of it, a lot of development, it's a very lengthy process to redevelop a piece of property. With form-based code, we have a lot of this outlined already in the document, and it will really streamline the effect. I saw an interesting graphic I got from a listserv recently, and it showed a graphic, basically the average development process for this particular town, not Stillwater, but another town in the U.S., was up to 2 years for redevelopment in an area. The form-based code really reduced that down to the 9 to 12 month period. So it allows for quicker redevelopment because the developers already know what the standards are, what they have to meet, and it's more easily laid out. And then the 5th function is the definition, and it's really just a glossary of terms, the technical terms in there. Everybody asks, what's a WUNF? I probably didn't say that right, but it's a type of street. It's a living street is what it is, and it has a definition of that. It gives you more definitions like a general Euclidean land development code that we have today. We have definitions in there, but a little more detail, and they have pictures to go along with the definition so you can get a visual representation of it. This is a current zoning map of the redevelopment area. As you can see, it looks like your child's crayon box up on the screen. There's 8 different zoning types in there, zoning districts as there is, and currently there's no design guidelines or requirements for this area based on design. If you drive through this area, you will see that. You will see that there's many different types of building types, one beside each other, from residential to commercial to multifamily to offices, commercial, everything. This is a proposed transect map. Transects, there are 6 transects generally in form-based codes. It goes from Transect 1, which is generally agricultural park type areas, to Transect 6, which is a very dense urban area. For this area, we are proposing 3 transects, the T4, the T5, and the T6 district. And I'll go in them a little more detail in a few minutes. As you can see, this is a much simpler, cleaned up map. There's only 3 transects. The dark red area, which is closest to the university, is T6, which is the most dense type of development in this area. T5 is the orange, and T4 is the yellow. You see a crosshatch area that is adjacent to the university. This is a 75-foot height limit restriction for this area. You can have, since it's very in-depth, we have in conjunction with some feedback we received, 75-foot height restriction in this area that is hatched on the screen here. Like I said, there's 3 transects, more dense, the darker the red, the lighter color is T4. This will also include design guidelines for each transect and certain requirements such as minimal setbacks, but also maximum setbacks on the properties to encourage the development that will be closer to the street to make it more of a walkable community. And that is the goal of this areas of form-based code, to make it more of an experience in the redevelopment corridor. A little bit about Transect 4, the T4 district, the least dense area for this, general urban. This is a little graphic I pulled off the internet that shows kind of a mixed use of building heights, and so it's lower density, lower heights buildings in this area. It is less dense. It's probably more residentially driven in a lot of areas because it is less dense, more walkable areas. Somewhat close to what we have today would be this type of area around the campus would be a Transect 4. Mixed use, but primary residential urban fabric, wide range of building types. You could have single family residential, side yard family residentials, houses with alleys where you access your garage or your parking from the back of your house instead of the street side to push the house closer to the front to make it more walkable to the sidewalk. Setbacks and landscaping are variable in this. You have a little more freedom because it's less dense and you have more green space, more landscaped areas. Some of the frontage types that you'll see are common yard, porches and fences, dooryards, forecourts, and stoops. The typical height in the T4 district is 1 to 3 stories. Like I said, it's not very dense. And you have some civic spaces in here, some small parks, maybe some squares, some green space that is more walkable and more conducive to residential areas. The next transect is T5, the urban center. This is very similar to downtown today. It's walkable. It has pretty moderate density that you would see generally on Main Street in the area. But T5 calls for a higher density of mixed-use buildings that can accommodate retail, office space, row houses, and apartments. More multifamily housing would be seen in this area on the upper floors of a lot of buildings. Has a tight network of streets with wide sidewalks, street trees, and really the buildings should be set pretty much close to the right-of-way and on the public sidewalk. You can see townhouses in here, larger apartments, offices, workspace, civic buildings, mostly attached buildings, definitely trees in the public right-of-way, and shallow to zero setbacks because we really encourage the building to be oriented to the street and set to the sidewalk. Generally, heights in these areas are 2 to 5 stories. It's a little bit, like I said, a little more denser, which means also a little bit higher type of buildings in here. The next transect is T6, the urban core, which is the most dense transect which you would have. It's similar to what is proposed in a lot of areas. You see a lot of larger cities that have very urban core areas. Obviously, we're not going to have the 30-foot tall skyscrapers here in Stillwater, and we would not allow that. But it's more dense urban areas. It's the highest density and height with the greatest variety of use. You propose a larger blocks and maybe continuous block development instead of maybe a quarter block, but in the T5 district, this would be encourage larger development, larger block development, and the streets have city streets with full landscaping. Buildings are set close to very wide sidewalks because it is the most urban area. When you want to walk, I hate walking down a sidewalk and I meet somebody else, we both have to turn sideways, and I'm not a very thick man, so it's wide sidewalks to allow for that. Medium to high density multi-use building. You could have entertainment, civic, cultural uses, attached buildings generally forming a continuous block is what you would like to see in this area, is to continuality of buildings. Pretty much shallow to zero setbacks. The building will definitely be facing the streets in the T6 area, oriented to the sidewalk to make it more walkable. The height can vary from 4 to 10 stories in this area and includes anything from green spaces to park plaza areas where you could have concerts in the city or concerts at night on the plaza or whatever you would like to see. Form-based code, components and provision, these eight items are all included in the form-based code, and these are where you really get down to regulations and the type of lighting or the type of parking. These are the regulations to it. There's lighting, parking site, landscape requirements, signage requirements, architectural provisions, and the public realm, and the pedestrian environment. As we said, this should be a very pedestrian-oriented type of development where we want to create walkable communities where you're less car dependent. Each type of area that we'd have would also be very multimodal and bicycle, walking, and automobiles. And Patty will talk about the thoroughfare designations for the streets and the street design later. I would like to point out one thing on the lighting code. We've received several staff comments from other departments here. And on page 20, item 14, we would like to see possibly removed for our recommendation to council. Design of pedestrian and or ornamental lighting in the public frontage shall be coordinated with the street lighting luminaries. That's very confusing. I don't even know what it says. So we're looking at possibly striking that in the future. But we have very detailed guidelines for lighting and all these components in this, so the developer comes in, they know what they need. It's very clear, it's stated very clearly, this is what you need for your lighting, or your public realm, or your site requirements, or your landscape plan. We'll require a landscape plan in here. Like I said, the pedestrian environments, streets, sidewalks, the walkability, create a walkable space. Lighting, we have consistent lighting standards, best practice, no light glow escaping to the sky. Some pretty stringent, depending on your transect, changing the different, lights have to go off at a certain time at night unless your business is still open, to really allow to make it, since it is mixed use, you will have residential. How many people like the light shining in their house while you're trying to sleep? I live in an apartment and I have that issue and I have to put blackout curtains. So this will really allow for these types of things to make it more of a great place to live, work, and play. Parking, we're trying to limit really on-street parking in a lot of areas, but also limit parking in front of buildings. We want to encourage parking as a third layer, as it's called on the site plan, behind buildings. Most development, first thing you see when you pull up is a parking lot. Mm-hmm. It's not very attractive in my book. Mm-hmm. So to push parking to the third layer. The first layer is the public realm. The second layer is the building itself, and the third layer is parking or accessory structures for this. As I said, there will be a landscape plan for this area. It'll be much clearer to understand than our current landscape requirements for development, which are very confusing. Staff thinks it's confusing. Many of the developers have been very confused by our point system in our current land development code. But this will really say, hey, what you need, what you really need to do. And the public right-of-way will have to be landscaped as well and be required. We are in discussions with the citizens group and other ad hoc committees to discuss the financing of the public RAM, public-private side at this point, leaning more towards the public side doing that. Signage, there's always signage requirements. It's pretty restrictive in this area because there's not a lot of, you don't want signs in the right-of-way as well. The biggest change is no pole signs in this area, but signs can protrude from the building into the right-of-way because the buildings will be put up to the property line in theory for most development. So it can extend out. Signs will be smaller because it will be walking. It's a predominant mode here. Lots of street trees, so signage will be visible from the pedestrians as well as the streetways. Architectural design guidelines will be implemented in this area. We have certain regulations that require a minimum percentage of glass or transparency glazing on the front of building, so you can see into the building. How many people like walking into a dark building that you can't see? It's not very inviting. If you have glasses, you can see the display of what's going on inside. You're more likely to walk in and see what's going on, and it's more inviting. Have minimal designs like that, along with materials and several other things as well. I spoke with the public realm, what's included in that, and how we're still working out who will pick that tab up, developers, or what type of agreement we will have in the financing of that, and how to develop the public realm. And now Patty will talk about streets and thoroughfare designation.
Thank you, Aaron. One element of the form-based code is the thoroughfare designation. There are 7 categories of designations of the streets in this area. Some of the evaluated items that we use to designate the thoroughfares is the existing right-of-way, the adjoining uses for the proposed transects, and the proposed pedestrian corridor. Here are the different thoroughfare designations. The first one is the throughway. The throughway, there is only one street in this area, and that's Duck Street. That could become the throughway. It has a 100-foot right-of-way. It has 2 designs. This one is showing the 2 travel lanes. We also have 4 travel lanes with the median. With the 4 travel lanes, the median is smaller. And then on both sides, we have parking, the bike tracks, continuous planting strip with street trees, and sidewalks. The second one is the connector. It has 2 travel lanes, and then both sides has the bike track, street trees and tree wells, and sidewalk. It doesn't have any parking proposed for these type of streets. Then we have mixed use, which has the 2 travel lanes, and then on both sides is the parking, bike tracks, street trees and tree wells, and the sidewalks. The village thoroughfare has 2 travel lanes. The bikes share the road, so there are no separate bike tracks. And then on both sides, we have parking, street trees and tree wells, and sidewalks. The next one is the neighborhood. And the neighborhood had several different right-of-ways, so we have 3 different designs. So we're only showing you the one. The only difference is the availability of parking. All of them have 2 travel lanes shared with bikes, a continuous planting strip with street trees and sidewalks. The first one has no parking, this one has parking on one side, and the third has parking on both sides. And then Aaron mentioned Wonderf. This was implemented in the Netherlands and in Flanders, and in translation it means living street. It's a street in which the pedestrians and cyclists have priority over the motorists. Portions of Husband Street, which the Wonderf is proposed for, only has a 40-foot right-of-way. And it has been designated in the corridor redevelopment plan as a pedestrian corridor. You'll notice that it does have different paving than some of the other streets. And that's one way you can use is a different type of paving or different color or something to signify that what kind of street it is. A Wonderf doesn't have curbs. It's all the same height. And it does, so the paving does extend up to the buildings, and it also has street trees. And then our last one is called a lane. And the lanes have 20-foot right-of-ways. They're basically alleys that have sometime in the past become streets. A lane is divided into 2 10-foot strips, with one side being designated for pedestrian and bicyclists, and the other one for one-way traffic. Our findings include that staff had input from a citizen committee in drafting the proposal and recommendation on the private and city responsibilities. And one of their recommendation is that the city be responsible for the public realm. Public realm is from right-of-way line to right-of-way line, so that, as Aaron said, includes the sidewalks, street furnishings, street trees, bike tracks, and travel lanes. But the next step in this recommendation is identifying the funding sources for the development of the public realm, and that document will be coming at a later date, hopefully prior to the activation date of our form-based code. Number 2, the area that will be covered by the form-based code is the corridor redevelopment area. Number 3, the dynamics in this area are reflective of those throughout Stillwater. Number 4, the historical Euclidean zoning does not meet the need of this area. The form-based codes are an accepted method of development regulation. And number 6, the regulating plan will track immediately following the text portion of the form-based code. All right, and with that, I'll call Aaron back up here, and we will field questions and discussion. Are there any questions?
I've got some questions.
Okay.
Under the traditional Euclidean zoning, if I was a developer and wanted to go in and develop a property under this, if I was met the use by right, I go in, get a permit, start my project. What if under this form-based code, what's the process for a developer to start their project?
It's basically the same process. We have an application. Do we have?
Continue. Okay. I'm going to pull up a chart that has
the process on it. They submit the application. It is, if they have met all the requirements in the form-based code, then it's approved and they get their permit. If for some reason they want changes and or cannot meet the form-based code requirements for some reason, then we do have a process where a plan can come to this body for approval. They can also go to the Board of Adjustment for variances. I didn't bring mine up here. And everything else is administratively approved.
So if they meet the guidelines under the form-based code, architecturally, landscape, all that, then it'll just go traditionally like it would just along the same process.
If you get let's say a commercial use by right, CUBR comes in, that's the site plan, the building permit, drainage, everything comes in that plan. And they have met everything on the site plan and the building permit, and everything is clear, then they get their building permit. Okay. This is basically the same process.
Okay.
That is correct, and as I believe Mr. Buchert said, look on page 4 or 5 of the draft document, and it has the development plan process, and basically like we talked, it's very similar to it currently is. It generally goes faster if you have some nuances of needing to make some different type of decisions. This is outlined a little more where we have a little more of administrative review, where internal review committee can make some decisions and hash a lot of things out because it's already written here. And if not, some things like a development plan or minor site plan amendments will be approved by the Development Services Director, Ms. Innocent, at this time. And if there's alternative compliances that are requested, then that would come to and approved by the Planning Commission. And if there's variances, special exceptions, or appeals, it would still go to the Board of Adjustment, which is the current process.
Okay.
Answer your question?
Nope.
When I look at page 77,
there's only 66.
Yeah, that's what he meant. The back page.
The very back page.
Okay.
In my document that I have, it has Ramsey and Washington as a color, and I'm unclear what the color is as it relates to our thoroughfare. What is it?
Village.
A village.
Yes.
Washington.
So a village has parallel parking on both sides and 2 9-foot lanes.
That is correct. Two travel lanes, 9 foot wide each, plus parking, and share the road, so bicyclists and automobiles would share the same lane.
Okay.
This is really designated based on the existing right-of-way in that area.
In terms of this is passed tonight, you talked about the public, I'll call it the public street right-of-way and improvements in the public street right-of-way. If this passes tonight, it is not a requirement that adjacent properties, when they redevelop, have to improve that public street right-of-way. Is that a correct statement or not a correct statement?
Yes, that is a correct statement. The recommendation of the Citizens Committee is that the city be responsible for that public right-of-way. And we are going to have, within staff, identify some funding sources for those improvements in that right-of-way.
I think to answer your question in a different way is, yes, if redevelopment was to occur on a certain street, if this plan is approved by council and acted on July 1st as recommended, or as the plan is right now, any redevelopment that does occur would have to follow by the public realm, the street designation. If the public is doing that, it might not occur immediately. When a quarter block is developed, it would at some point, that would be part of some of the funding options and development plan we have to work at as to what would trigger the public realm to be redeveloped.
Go ahead.
So, sorry.
I have more questions, but.
At this point, the city doesn't have this is our street number one that we're designating we're going to do first. They're going to base it off of how the development goes in the area.
That is correct.
And they're in that letter, that document that's going to come out, is any of that cost tied to the developer?
That has not been determined at this point. That is our next step as we create a regulating plan and also financing of the public realm. Is how to work that out. Does that fall on the developer? Does that fall on the city? Does that fall in type of a public-private partnership where the developer enters into an agreement with the city to redevelop their area in front of their building?
What's the time frame on that document? This goes through July 1st. Does that document come out July 2nd, or it
would
before
have to
council sees it?
Coincide with the adoption of July 1.
Does that document come back to this board?
No, it would not.
Okay.
I would like to point out that planning staff is not the only ones that, and the council, the committee are not the only ones that worked on the thoroughfare designations. We also had Jason P. from Transportation and his input. And in fact, one of the streets that they are getting ready to rebuild, or they may be rebuilding it now, is Maple from Duck, I believe, to Maine. And although they do not have it in their budget right now to do the whole right-of-way, they are going along with the plan, with this plan, to mark the street for the parking and the lane width and so forth. So he has endorsed these thoroughfares.
So he's building the structure for neighborhood, I think, is what that one would be. So he's building the structure for neighborhood, but they're not necessarily putting tree wells and all that expense into the project.
This was already on his list, so they didn't have the funds for the whole right-of-way, but so they're rebuilding the street. Okay. And at the same width that it already is, but there is enough width there to for the parking and other things in the street width.
Okay.
I have a couple of questions. These may be the same questions I asked last time, so forgive me. If somebody, we see people, it's happened tonight, combine lots of properties and rezone them for one bigger use that's more specific. If somebody has property that's within this area and adjacent to that, they have property that's outside this area, what governs in their development if they want to do something? So in other words, if one property they own is within the form-based code,
Oh, you mean right along the boundary
yeah,
that
and
they're
then
together?
one of them is outside of that, what do they, and then the other thing that they've got there is maybe zoned residential, but they want to take all of that and build something.
Well, in that case, they may have residential, or commercial. And, as the two properties, they would have to either, I'm not sure that we've worked out that's interesting that problem hadn't come up yet, but work out which one they're going to use. The Euclidean zoning, or are they going to follow the Transect or the form-based code? Whatever it is, that they would have to probably come through with an amendment of some kind to change one or the other.
Okay. We would work and determine it's either in or out, and then make that designation.
Yeah.
If there needed to be a rezoning case, and at that time, that would come before. It'd be one or the other, it would not be both.
Second question I had is regarding the previous document that we saw. I can't recall, but it seemed like there was more discussion about utilities, and maybe even a drawing. I don't know. This document seems to really not address utilities at all, other than it says you need to show them and how you plan to connect to them. And I know, water lines are typically in the front, and sewer lines are typically in the back, or maybe down the center of the street. And then you've got the cable company, the gas company. And I know I asked this question last time, as far as, did you go out and talk with the different utility providers, and obviously the city being the number one utility provider for certain things? How does this work for them in terms of maintaining their utilities, constructing new utilities?
We did have a meeting with the city utilities. We didn't go to the outside. And there was some concern with the section that we had in there with utilities. So we have taken it out. I did go to Jason, since the public is, or the city is going to be responsible for the public realm. And he works, when he's rebuilding a street, he works with the utility departments in either relocating or upgrading or whatever needs to be done in that area. So I think because of Jason's cooperation with the utility companies and so forth, that we didn't have to have anything in this with utilities.
And also, I had several conversations with some of the other water, sewer, electrical as well. And a lot of the infrastructure in this area has supposedly got some age on it. Obviously, this is one of the first areas that was developed in Stillwater, and this would give them the opportunity to, if they need to do some corrective work to maybe upsize sewer lines or water lines or relocate some of the electric utilities, as the public realm is being developed or redeveloped, this will give them the opportunity to maybe redevelop it at a lower cost, because they're not having to tear up a sidewalk to access a water line, but the sidewalk will already be tore up. They can work in conjunction with the redevelopment of the public realm to replace some of the utilities. Stillwater Public Utilities seem to like what is presented here. They're very happy with this, and they're looking at some of the opportunities that, as this is developed and we look at funding sources, to really work in conjunction with the Planning and Development Services Department to redevelop some of their public utilities in that area.
One final question. Sorry, I think I said my last one was a final question, but the existing alleys, I noticed they're not addressed in any of the transportation thoroughfares, WNRFs, whatever. So what happens, those are public right-of-way right now, I think. Some of them probably are. What happens to that?
The existing alleys will remain, because one of the elements for the form-based code is to try to get driveways and parking in the rear. So those alleys are going to be utilized as well as the access to your garages. Your garages are going to be in the back, and your main building is going to be in the front. So those alleys will remain and be utilized.
So does there need to be a construction standard for the alleys, just like you have for all of the other public right-of-way?
The alleys
As far as
will,
width and-
well, there is a construction standard already in the city standards,
Okay.
and that's what it will go by.
The hope is to maybe improve some of the alleys that are now dirt paths or gravel paths,
Right.
where since this will be the main egress into parking areas, to pave them and to bring them up to code a little better.
Okay.
If you go to your Transect map, if I'm saying that word right, we did a rezoning tonight to a high-rise district. And my perception that rezoning, that engineer developer wanted to build a 10-story apartment complex on this. My perception of looking at this map is that a significant portion of the rezoning is in the orange area that would limit it to 5 stories. So, they're going to go through quick here and try to get this development in so they can make it 10 stories, and then we got a non-conforming use. Should we not change this map so it matches what we did earlier today, or is there some reason not to do that?
Well, your recommendation is not going to cover the regulating plan. It's going to follow next. And so maybe that will be your recommendation to change that. We have not had a pre-app or seen any plans of any kind for this rezoning that we did tonight, so I can't say what they're planning. I mean, I figure it's going to be a high-rise, but they have a lot of property. We don't know how many stories. We don't know anything about what they're going to be doing.
And with the adoption or the potential adoption of this, there will be many instances where most property owners will not abide by the zone or the proposed Transect map because this is something totally new to Stillwater. It only will be enacted when they want to redevelop their property.
But this is a development that's going through the process fairly quickly. So as long as they get in before 1 July, they're all right?
Yes, sir. Now,
And then when we change this, there'll be a non-conforming use?
correct. Now, as many people as are ones that are trying to come in with that, we have several individuals who are waiting for this to be adopted so in order to redevelop their property as well.
Okay.
If you'll notice that, well, no, I believe it does cover. Okay, never mind.
Is there another example you want to bring to my attention?
I'm looking at the map wrong here.
I guess my position is, we passed a zoning tonight. I don't want to have a map that's non-conforming and she'll say something.
Yeah. We'll hear from the boss.
Staff has advised me that when the regulating plan is brought forward to the planning commission, that the color changes to the map can be made then.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else?
I got one last one. I'll let you go. This is obviously, I don't want to say pilot program, but this is a pilot program for this area. Is there any, there's no time frame on it. It will stay this way until 20 years from now we decide it's a great idea or not a great idea and we do something different? But,
Correct.
okay.
I mean, this will be the type of zoning and regulation and development plan that we will have for this area until, hopefully I'm long gone. But
hopefully that's a while then.
It could change next year.
Yeah, I'm still
So,
so my first presentation to you, who knows what'll happen. But no, it's will be adopted. There is no sunset clause on this at this time. If it works well, maybe look at expanding it in the future.
This is hopefully a simple one. You mentioned City of Tulsa has it, Norman's starting it. Have you guys called the City of Tulsa and asked them, lessons learned? What would you have done different?
I haven't actually talked to the city of Tulsa. I have looked up their map and their plan and everything, their code. I did talk to the city of Norman last week, I believe it was. And theirs is on hold right now because they've had so many other projects that had to be moved forward in front of it. And I don't know that they've had any problems with it. They hired a consultant to do theirs, and I don't know if they did that with just staff or with a citizen committee like we did. I don't know, but I do know that a consultant wrote it.
How does their area compare in size to what we're proposing?
I would say it compares pretty close. I did not measure it or anything, but it's from Boyd, just north of the OU, if you're familiar with Norman, from Boyd east and kind of curves around and then makes a curve and comes back down to Boyd. So that's their area, and it's probably about the same acreage, more or less.
Thank you.
So I have a question. So I think I've heard this a couple times tonight, but as an existing property owner in this corridor, you will not have to conform to this unless you're going to make changes.
Right.
Right?
That's right.
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions for staff? Okay. So the next step in this is to open up a public hearing, but actually, we've been going for almost 2 hours here, and I think some of us would like a break. So if nothing else, to visit the facilities. So if we could take a 10-minute recess and reconvene back here at, well, we'll say 9 minutes, 7:30.
It's cold in here.
So I'll make my adjustments for the Stillwater Public Library.
Stillwater Planning Commission meeting. We've been having just finished having a presentation by staff on form-based code. And it's going to be time now to open up the public hearing portion of this request or this plan. I just want to mention a couple of things. One, we did not have a sign-up sheet tonight for those of you that want to speak on this. But we ask that you come up, and if comments have already been made, that you not restate somebody else's comments, just in order of keeping track of time and not talking for a long time. Just keep your comments brief if you can. We do want to hear what you have to say. The other thing is just to remember that what is being proposed is a new zoning district that's going to replace the myriad of different zoning districts that are there now. So this is a new, it's called a code, but yet it's a zoning plan. Okay, so I don't have anything else to say on that, so we'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. And I do have that written down that Mr. John Bugg would like to speak first, and then after that, we'll just open it up.
Thank you very much. I'm here by virtue of the fact that the church that I pastor, University Heights Baptist Church at 323 South Knobloch, is in the proposed form-based code zone or area. The first thing that I did whenever I heard about this form-based code and saw the complexity of it as well as the thickness of the manual was to think, who in the world would ever want this? Or why does OSU want this? That was my first thought. Who is pushing for this and why do they want it? And so I read the entire code, 70 some odd pages. I read multiple legal articles about form-based codes throughout the United States, and I drew my own conclusions. And these are my conclusions. I don't care who's behind it. I think the form-based code has advantages for everyone. There are some disadvantages, and there is a great deal of suspicion in this city about the objectives and motives of its politicians and OSU. But for me, stepping back, and I speak on behalf of John Bugg and why I think it would be good for the church where I pastor and other landowners in the area, all this information we received about what the code does and the different street types and all that kind of stuff, here's the way that I boil it down. A use-based code, what we have now, says you can only use your property for this. It restricts based upon what you can build. A form-based code actually removes all of those restrictions, says you can build anything in the world you want. You don't have to come before this board or any others to request a zoning variance anymore because everything goes. And in fact, you can build commercial with retail, industrial, housing, offices. You can combine all these uses. All right. I had one question that I want to clarify before I continue about why I think this is good for everybody. This is the question. If I am a landowner, a private landowner in this area, and I make no changes whatsoever to my property, will my taxes increase and/or will I be required to fund public works or public right-of-way improvements? Can you answer that?
Yes, your property taxes will probably go up because your property values will increase. The amount of tax to correlate to that will go up. As the funding source for public works, that is to be determined as previously mentioned. We are working on if it's the developer that will use to fund the public realm, or if the city will do that, or whatever combination that we will do for the public works and the type of development that will come there.
That is the primary objection to this plan. My taxes are going to go up and/or I'm going to be required to foot bills that I didn't have to previously. Here's why I think that's an insufficient reason not to adopt the form-based code. I have a handout here and some talking points. I gave copies to you guys. I have copies Copies available for anybody else that wants to look at them, but basically I've broken it down into what does this do that helps the city? What does it do to help the landowners within the new form-based code zone? What does it do to help business owners in that area? What does it do that's advantageous to Oklahoma State? And as far as the church is concerned, how is it good for us? The very first thing I want to say is a lot of complaints in this city have to do with why is this street torn up again? Why aren't we fixing the streets? Why are we constantly replacing pipes in winter? We need money to build infrastructure and improve city services. Everything from sanitation, street improvements, police and fire departments. We need money. Where are we going to get that money? Okay? I think that this will increase tax revenue, not from existing owners or landowners. Instead, it attracts folks coming in and developing, and it's their tax dollars that are going to help us pay for streets and improvements. It's what's going to be built that will do this, not just the city having to foot the bill. And potentially beyond the form-based code area. Okay, so that's the first advantage to the city, increased tax revenues. Second advantage to the city, I just mentioned actually, is that we attract new tax partners. People who are going to come in, build things, and then contribute either in sales taxes or property taxes by virtue of having built some monstrosity on the property. So the city can attract tax partners, largely because the use of the property will no longer be restricted. A developer can come in and build a mixed-use facility. Third, as far as the area around OSU is concerned, instead of a steady decline, this new form-based code will promote development that maintains the hometown feel in Stillwater. One of the great things about Stillwater is it feels like home. It has a small town feel. The form-based code says, or the city can say with the code, we want it to look like downtown looks. We want it to look like hometown looks. We don't care what you build, but when you build it, we want it to look like Middle America. Okay? So, third, I think that this could potentially, especially since it's around the university, create a destination venue. Make Stillwater a destination venue. People go to, I don't know, Branson, Guthrie, wherever, and there are these unique parts of the community. People don't just come to watch a ball game. They actually come to shop in the shops, right? So creating a corridor that would stretch all the way from Main Street to the campus, a walkable retail corridor, could actually increase our tourism and make this a destination venue. The advantages, and I said on the sheet here, to surrounding landowners. I was really talking about landowners surrounding the church or in the district. Here's the advantages. Improvements to infrastructure and city services by virtue of the development by somebody else and their tax dollar. Okay, so improvements to the infrastructure and city services within this form-based code area that I don't have to pay for. Yeah, I'm going to have to chip in a little bit more, but the bulk of it, because of the new development, the revitalization of the area, will actually improve what we have down there. Secondly, you have greater flexibility in the potential uses of your real estate. In the case of the church, we are not a tax-paying entity because we're the separation of church and state. This form-based code is something that I could get behind and say, you know what, church, we want to do something that's good for the community. We want taxes being paid. Why don't we lease this to some developer for 99 years? We will get some money that we might use for facilities or whatever, but let's get behind the city and actually convert some of this non-tax revenue property, like the church property, into tax revenue producing property. Okay? Surrounding landowners would also have increased property values that go along with those increased tax burdens, whatever insignificant amount they might be. You're going to have an increased population density, a greater desirability for developers to come in, and additional retail and residential development that will make people want to come and rent your house. All right, advantages to small business owners. What I just said for other landowners and this extra one. It will increase retail traffic for existing business owners in the area because there will be additional residents that can walk to the business and because there will be adjacent complementary retail businesses. You create synergy with businesses in that area. Advantages to Oklahoma State. Well, of course, they get the improvements to the infrastructure and city services. But I think, and I actually, whenever this first came out, I went to some people on campus, and I'm told I shouldn't believe a word they say. But I was told by them, we're neither for it or against it. I think they ought to be for it. You know, I think they should be for it because what we are doing is we may have the potential. I've never been to Lawrence, Kansas or Manhattan, Kansas, but my understanding is there is a unique environment around the campus of those universities that we really don't have. Even OU, God forbid, has a campus corner that attracts people for things other than football games. Okay? And so I think that would be a benefit to the university to create that buzz around the school. As a pastor of a church, I think that the church has done a very poor job of being involved in community. And we take advantage of our tax exemptions, but we ought to be pouring back in the community. Social services, food banks, you name it, that the church ought to be involved in giving back to the community. The way I see it, this form-based code will provide a potential resource of income that we could pour back into the community. That means everything from having some say in what goes into that development in the area that we own, as well as just, you know, how can we use whatever God might bless us with from this development to help Stillwater, to help people that are hurting in Stillwater, and to be good neighbors to everybody else. And with that, I am 40 minutes late for a personnel committee meeting that probably is about my termination. Any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Bug?
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, and just to announce that if anyone else gets up and speaks, you need to continue to address this commission and not ask staff personal questions about the application. We'll take your questions and we'll address those at the end of the public hearing. Okay, so who would like to speak next in favor or opposition of this request or this plan? It's not a request. Okay.
I'm Robert McCullough, 800 North Main. We have a number of city plans that have been established in the last 30 years that I've seen. This is another one that comes on. You have 10 transects. Or 6 transects. We have 6 zonings. The zonings are satisfactory. The development going in this area is tremendous. We actually have approval for a high-rise that may not qualify with the new deal behind it. I mean, it scares me. We don't need to change what is going good right now. The 5 units that were described for form-based are a regulatory plan. We have a regulatory plan. We have a code. We have public standards. We have building standards. We have an administration of use. The 5th one was a definition of the form-based code, which he described roads and districts, that we're not going to change the roads in this district. This is a student housing district. It's well established. It's mixed with new and old projects right next to each other. And the economics is going to determine what happens. There are people coming into this town buying land at a high price, building on it. It's a phenomenal influx to Stillwater. The taxes will come. This is a bid district. Once this is established, once you have identified this as a form-based code, it is now a free-wheeled taxable entity. It can put in property tax like the downtown bid district, and that's what will happen. And we'll have a new set of codes on the old set of codes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCullough. No, I said thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor or opposition? Please come in forward and state your name and address, please.
Norma Jean Shamblin, 711 Lakeshore Drive. I'm not sure if I'm for or against it, because it'll depend on what the results of it are. I own property in there. I strongly believe in the individual being able to invest in their community and hopefully make a profit. But if I look at this, I see two things that bother me. One, you say it's a simplification. It's 77 pages. It's not a simplification. You looked at all those regulations, landscaping, lighting, that doesn't affect me now. And I also look at it, there's the only way that you can develop what you're putting out there is for somebody to buy up huge parts of this and redevelop it. An individual cannot come in and do this. I can't take my small lot here and there and develop it to your codes. It has to be a part of a much bigger thing, because you're changing the landscaping, you're changing the roads. So you are saying to the individual owners like myself, if your property is eventually going to conform to what you want here, it's going to have to be sold to somebody who comes and develops a large part of it. And actually, staff has sort of said that to me. You know, this is to allow this area to be totally redeveloped. And I disagree with the first speaker. I don't think it's going to make it hometown Stillwater. What you're doing is turning this area into a part of, making it look like a large town. Not a small town, but a large town. And, when you go down the street with Wooden Nickel and Hideaway and those are small town, Eskimo Joe's. These are small town developments. They won't be there. They can't be there because you have to develop a whole street. And people came to me wanting to buy my property and said, okay, we'll do this, we'll do that. You can, and when they were done with it, the people that have the commercial properties that they rent the buildings from me, they couldn't be there. They'd be gone. And yet I agree, you're going to have a bigger tax base. You're going to have maybe a better looking area. So I don't know. I think if you pass it, you have to understand these are the consequences that are going to come. Any questions?
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
My name is Richard Williamson. I'm a landowner or landlord of a house on Husband.
Can you give us your address, please?
124 North Husband.
Okay.
Or where I live?
Yes.
1020 South Acorn Lane, east of town.
Okay.
Okay. I think I've been asleep at the wheel at all of this. I've heard about this just in talk around town, and I had mixed emotions of what I heard. I heard one thing, then the other. So my wife says, you need to go to this meeting. I said, well, I'm not usually one of those guys, but I think I will. What I've heard here tonight, I'm probably going to ask questions that have been asked, but I'm going to ask them. And if I apologize for that. Who initiated this? I mean, where did this idea come from? Is it a group of people? Or do we know for sure where it really originated? I mean, do we really know? I mean, do I have names of credit? I mean, can you tell me who started this?
Paula, do you want to address that?
I mean, can I ask that question?
Okay.
So we'll get your questions written down, and then we'll have staff address those.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just...
know we can give you the answer to
Okay.
that.
Well, I'm just curious, you know, is it a group of citizens that, hey, this is a great idea? Is it one person someplace else that's driving this behind the scene? And I don't like to use eminent domain, but you can disguise it a lot of ways. And one thing that caught my attention when I received this in the mail, the reason I came, I'm like, why are they picking on this part of downtown? It seems a little interesting to me that it's real close to OSU. Right now, I have reasonable housing for students. And I'll tell you, and I have other houses in town, and that is a concern when parents are trying to fund, education is expensive enough. And a two-bedroom house, window units, $700 a month, that's just about as low as you can go, and my taxes have gone up, and I need to go up, but I haven't. But I'm just saying, I don't see this is going to promote a lot of the landowners like me in that area, because the area on the map, I don't see commercial. It's not much commercial. It's mostly housing, isn't it? It's mostly student housing. And I hate really to say this, but I'm afraid I won't get another chance to, but it really appears to me that OSU is trying to drive us out. And I don't think that's in the best interest of the taxpayers and citizens of Stillwater. Now, I'm all for the university, and but I guess my question is, who started it, where did it come from? I heard this plan, and my house is on Husband, and I think Husband was one of the streets that said, hey, it looked like cobblestone walking and maybe parking in the rear. What are we going to do about the alley? Who's going to develop the drives at the back? Is it the city? The city's money going to have to do that, or? That's another question. Is the city going to have to dig up sewers, repave roads, relocate, like they said earlier, utilities? Because if you're saying the developer has to, well, I'm not a developer. I'm just sitting there, and 90% of the people of the, I guess I'd have to say, of the dwellings there are like me. So I don't know who you're expecting that's going to come in there and develop, because besides the ones that are left that they haven't bulldozed our houses down yet, we haven't sold our souls to, are the high-rise apartments. And that's basically my concern is, where's all the money going to come from? Because right now it's just people like me. And if it's not people like me, I'm going to have to sell out to someone that I hear that's going to pay for it. And I don't see that there's that much left to sell out to. The other, I think I asked this question earlier, why did we not choose another part of town to try this on? I mean, you can say a lot of things, and I've seen these areas. Tulsa has some of them, but just looking at this, it just caught my attention that this started close to OSU. We didn't choose another part of town. It looked like it'd make more sense to me to choose a part of town that's almost attached to the downtown area now, because then you'd have downtown area of nicest walking area and whatever that just propagates out to that, not just this, over here by OSU. I think that's my 3 questions.
I've got 3 questions written down.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you, sir. We'll get those answered for you here shortly. All right, who else would like to speak on this plan?
Roger Ghost, 113 East 8th, and I've watched this from the periphery since we started it. I even helped a seminar here. And since day one, my big question is who's going to pay for it? And Mr. Bugg, I'm going to try to state these as questions. You can answer them someday. He was stating that the tax increase will help pay for them. Property tax in this town doesn't pay for anything the city operates. I mean, we can't use the property tax for paving of streets and alleys and sewer and water. And one reason we can't pave streets right now is because the water lines that are broken or damaged, and we don't have the money to pay for the water line repair. So the streets aren't getting paved. So don't try to fool me that the public realm's all going to come out of the public coffers, and I've heard it both ways tonight. We don't have the money. We can't patch our potholes that we've already got. So I'd like a breakdown of what that property tax is. I don't think it's there. You know, Mr. Bugg said this was hometown. I was born in Oklahoma City. We had very, very few residents above their businesses in Oklahoma City. And my church was downtown. I was down there every week. We didn't have this kind of thing. I moved to Blackwell for 6 years. We had one family living above their business. And that was 40 some odd years ago. So this is not hometown. Stillwater, we don't have any residents. Some of you remember a motor shop that was on Main Street right north of the furniture store. We had a resident living there, but otherwise we don't have people living downtown. We have people moving into town now. My daughter lives downtown, and there's a whole other issue with that. We don't have parking. We have street lights in the buildings. We have trash picked up at 6:30 in the morning, so things like that. This guy, you know, it was put on the table, attract new tax partners. Again, property tax isn't going to pay for this. It's going to have to come some other way. Early in staff's presentation, it said it basically indicated it would not affect the property. I contend, and I do enough development work, that this is going to negatively affect the values of property because they're going to be harder to develop, and it's going to the developers only can spend so much, so he's going to have to depress the price that he pays so they can meet these requirements. I'd like to know why this thing wasn't extended to Main Street, because there's a whole lot of blight along Main Street east of this that could be taken care of. I think it's going to push out the small lot mom and pops. They're just not going to be able to do it from what I can see. And again, I've heard both ways on funding. Public realm is going to be public realm is going to be private, or it'll be a partnership. If I'm developing on one side of an alley, it appears to me I'm going to have to pay for the whole alley if the public doesn't have the money, or if my neighbor across the alley doesn't want to pay. So it's like you pave it all or you can't do your project. So, and I agree with the previous statement, it's not individual friendly. So, and I would like to have a list of the 400 cities that have this so we could inquire of them and how it's going, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gose.
My name is Mike Ebert. I live at 2206 Stone Point Court in Stillwater. I really, I don't know if I'm for or against. I'm for Stillwater, and if it's good for Stillwater, I'd probably be for. I'm just not sure it's good for Stillwater and its overall development, and we've done a few little things around town, but it is a big deal, and I've, like Roger from the beginning, have been at meetings and I've read in the internet what the Form-Based Code Institute says form-based zoning is, or form-based code is. And I hate to use the word assume because, you know, it can get you in trouble. I assume that you all have read the whole code and really understand the form-based code, because I don't. And I don't, if you do and you feel comfortable about voting your conscience, then that's wonderful. I assume then if you pass it on to the city council, they will have a good understanding of the form-based code. But with what I've read about it, with what's been distributed and shown here tonight, I don't think anybody has a real clear vision for what this is going to do to Stillwater. And if I have a strong objection, and maybe I was listening wrong, maybe I've read wrong, I feel a little bit of intrusion into the private sector's ability to design their own property. I have a hard time imagining that a light industrial developer is going to conform with a cafe, and they're going to look similar or compatible. I don't see that happening, but if it will, it will. So anyway, I would just hope that you guys understand what you're going to be voting on and what you're going to pass on to City Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ebert. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this plan?
My name is Nigel Jones. I live at 712 North Grandview, and for openness, I'm also the university architect with OSU, and I was also on the Citizens Committee. So maybe that is seen as a good thing or a bad thing in the eyes of some people. But what I would say is that, not to reiterate what Mr. Bugg said, because I think he put a lot of the good points there, what I went into that committee understanding was that we had got this area which was to be the connection between the university and the downtown. And that was one of the reasons it had already been selected for the corridor development. And therefore, it seemed an appropriate area for the form-based code, which would allow this connection to develop in the way that was suggested about being the having the vitality, having the variety of uses there, which would provide that vital connection between the university. But I should say as well that at no time did I understand that the university had a push in this in any particular direction. The other part of it is, I think that we're looking at it from some of the development that we're putting in the Performing Arts Centre in that area, and we want to make sure that what is beyond us is a good development. It's perhaps going to be a development that will take a long time to fruition, but there was mention of the cities of Lawrence or Manhattan. They're cities I know well, and they do have a very vital and very active zone next to the university, which I think this kind of form-based code would begin to encourage that to happen. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Do you have a question?
No question.
Okay. Is there anyone else who would like to speak about this plan?
My name is Julie Smith, and I had no intention of speaking, so hopefully I can form this right.
What's your address?
Well, I live in Oklahoma City, but we own a house at 328 North Duncan,
Okay.
which is in this zone. We're not big investors or anything. We have 5 kids. We've had someone at OSU since 2006, and we have a couple more years left. So we bought a house. Our kids live there. What additional expenses would there be for a property owner in this district, and is there going to be any recurring maintenance fees attached to the property owner?
In my opinion, there's no additional expenses or no recurring fee. In other words, as long as you don't redevelop your property,
Right.
you can keep it the way it is. There's a debate. Some people say that when we do this, it will increase your property value, which may increase your property tax. There's some people that have stated tonight that this will decrease your property value, which will decrease your property tax, and I'm not going to give you an opinion one way or the other.
Which is fine. I was just looking
Yes.
at additional.
But in terms of maintenance fees or property fees, there's nothing in this zoning that even allows legally for us to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anyone else here this evening that would like to speak upon this plan? All right, seeing none, we will close the public hearing, and I guess, is this the point where we would have you staff answer some of the questions that were asked, or?
I would be happy to. Good evening, Paula Dennison, Development Services. And I have written down some questions, and please help me if I have missed any. Where and by whom was the form-based code initiated? A little bit of a recent history lesson with City of Stillwater when, as you are aware, the corridor redevelopment plan came out of our overall comprehensive plan exercise for the City of Stillwater. Comprehensive plan was adopted in 2001, and in 2012, the comprehensive plan, with the use of a citizen committee helping staff, the comprehensive plan was adopted for the entirety of the City of Stillwater. And that is the future vision guide for the City of Stillwater. From the comprehensive plan, the regulatory tools in any municipality's toolbox are the zoning regulations and the subdivision regulations. We have capped those together under our land development code. And y'all are familiar with those terms because just about everything we bring to you talks about land development code or zoning district or platting or comprehensive plan. So that's how those are tied together. In reviewing the overall comprehensive plan for the City of Stillwater, the staff and the citizens group started to recognize that there is an area of Stillwater where just about everything that occurs in Stillwater is occurring at this one place. And it is this area that has been identified under the corridor redevelopment plan. Prime opportunity for reinvestment, redevelopment, rehabilitation of that area, as we had already been seeing with the new high-rise district designation and the redevelopment that was occurring because of the specific high-rise zoning, which is only permitted in an area like the downtown bid or this area identified as the corridor redevelopment plan area. So we have the comprehensive plan for the whole city. We have the corridor redevelopment plan, which is almost a miniature neighborhood plan specifically for this area of the community. In evaluating how to implement the corridor redevelopment plan, we had zoning. We had 8 zoning districts in the area already. Had to be somewhat of a more simplified way to regulate the development and oversee the development and even encourage development in the area. The citizen group that we had who had been working with staff through the entire master planning process, we approached along with the ad hoc committee for land development, which is made up of 2 council members, the manager's office, the attorney's office, and myself. Had discussions with the citizen committee and the land development ad hoc committee of a new form of regulating development for the corridor redevelopment area. Form-based codes is an accepted form of regulating development. The other option we have is what we've got now. This was seen as an attempt to try something new, pilot project you referred to, Mr. McKeon, earlier. Try something new in a unique area of our community. And that's why it was worked through the citizen group, and y'all had seen it before, brought back to you tonight after we had some answers from the citizen committee that needed to be responded to. So therefore, you have the form-based code before you this evening. Why this part of town? Again, that corridor redevelopment plan and all of the activities and the uniqueness of that area There is not another area of town where so much stuff is occurring right up next to a university and connecting to our existing downtown area. Mr. Jones alluded to it earlier, that this corridor plan even was just that. It's another piece. We have the downtown. How do we connect to the university? We connect through this corridor plan. So that's another reason of why this part of town. Who develops from, and I will just generalize this, utilities and streets, where does the money come from to redo any of that? That will be a decision of the city council if the city council chooses to adopt the form-based code. As staff has indicated this evening, there will be a financing plan. We will get together with the city's chief financial officer, with the city manager's office, with the city attorney, to evaluate all of the financing options that are available to the city. I will remind everyone that under the current zoning regulations that we have adopted for this city, if a developer comes in and they want to demo all the buildings on multiple properties that they have purchased, and they want to build something else there, they want to redevelop that property, if there is an upsize of the sewer main, the water main, expansion of the street, anything like that, that is required to meet that development's needs and demands, it's 100% on the developer to expend those funds and design and construct to meet the demands of that specific development. So we will be looking at the possibility, I'm not promising anything here tonight, we're looking at the possibility of removing 100% of that for encouragement from a utility standpoint, with the city as the primary utility owner and operator in the area, but to encourage more reinvestment, revitalization, rehabilitation of the area by having some sort of financing plan that the city council will have an opportunity to take a look at. They're not going to have an opportunity to take a look at it by the time this narrative and the replacement of the zoning is going to them April 20th. They will have had an opportunity to look at it and act on it before the effective date of the form-based code, which we're proposing as July 1st, if it is adopted by the city council.
So let me restate my understanding of what you just said. For example, we've done high-rise type zoning. We've rezoned an area for high-rise. If that development comes in, they'll have to do the normal stormwater study, water study, sewer study, and traffic study, determine what, if anything, is needed improvements, and if things are needed improvements, if the water lines are not sufficient, they'll have to redo the water lines 100% their cost.
Yes.
And this
Under the current regulations.
and this does not change that regulation under this, but it could change when you do your future discussions.
Yes, we will be taking multiple options for the city council to consider.
Okay.
That is my anticipation.
Thank you.
Looking through right quickly. And the direct question, who will pay for it? Again, until the financing plan is developed and the discussions internally with chief financial officer, manager's office, and attorney's office, I cannot say who will pay for what portion of any development within the public realm. Private development, that is still the private developer who is responsible for those costs.
So I think what you just said is this code is going to go to the city council on April 20th.
It is advertised to have a public hearing at city council April 20th. That is if The Planning Commission tonight sends it forward to the council with a recommendation, either thumbs up or thumbs down. If it is not sent tonight, then the option would be to table or continue this item, and therefore it would be postponed from the April 20th City Council meeting to another date.
But right now, it's scheduled to go, pending a recommendation of either for or against this, to the April 20th meeting of the city council. But there's the plan for paying for it will come later, is what you're saying.
Yes, this is a three-part process right now. The first part is the zoning part.
Right.
Replacing our current zoning regulations, which includes parking, it includes landscaping, it includes the setbacks, it includes access, it includes building height. All of those are commonalities. They're just phrased and shown differently in form-based code. Not exactly the same. It's a different mechanism of having the similar requirements for development. The first phase is this, the form-based code, the zoning component. The second phase is the regulating plan, the plan that was brought up on the screen earlier this evening. That's like the zoning map for form-based code. In essence, is what it is. We operate off a zoning map all the time. Folks call in, what's my property zoned? We look it up on the map that is officially adopted by the council with a recommendation from the Planning Commission. This regulating plan will process, track, and operate the same way. It will be the zoning map for the form-based code area. The third component is going to be the financing package for the improvements that the public chooses to take on. If the public does not choose, and therefore city council by public, if the public does not choose to take on any of the improvements to the public realm, then it will remain as it is today, the responsibility of the private developers. But we are already talking about the opportunities for the city to look at how to finance the public realm improvements. And it is the recommendation of the citizen committee that the city be responsible for the areas and the requirements within the public realm.
So if we pass this forward and they see it April 20th, is council going to look at it in 3 phases as well, or does council look at it as a whole?
They will see this part of it April 20th. Then tracking closely behind it, I don't have the dates in front of me. If we have not advertised for it, we are soon to be advertising for the regulating plan of when it will go to council. And then once the committee works up the financing plan of when that will go to council. So they will also see it in 3 separate pieces, but none we are anticipating will be effective until all 3 have been acted on and decided on by the city council.
I have 2 questions on that then. If, one, is there a reason we're seeing 3 at a time other than we don't have the financing portion necessarily done? Is that something we have to phase this out? And 2, go ahead if you want to answer that one first.
Thank you. I will go ahead and answer. The minimum requirement of a zoning change and a zoning map is that they do not go together. They are separate applications, separate considerations, separate recommendations. And that is a legal issue there.
Okay.
When you have the narrative, until you have the narrative, you can't even consider the map.
Okay.
So that's why those track separately. So our hope was that tracking those 2 separately already, we don't know what changes may come out of the Planning Commission for either of those. We don't know what changes may come out of the council for either of those. Therefore, we have not developed a financing plan to bring to the council until we have some comfort of what is going to be adopted, if anything at all.
What happens then if this moves forward, everyone's fine with it, the regulating part moves forward, everything's fine with it, but then on the financing side, council's like, we don't like the way this is structured. What happens with, we've changed the zoning, we've changed the map, but now we don't have a way that's going to force the payment of it? What happens with that?
I would call together back the citizen committee group because they have worked diligently to prepare something that they do believe will be a benefit, not just to the area, but to Stillwater. I would call them back together and discuss with them, as well as the Land Development Ad Hoc Committee, on any other mechanism, because I do not, as a professional, I do not believe that a zoning change, which this is, should be borne entirely by the private development community or the private property owners. I do see that because we have the public realm component in this proposal, that there is some city obligation that is there. One possible consideration would be that any of the public realm requirements would be pulled out of this document, and all application would solely be onto private property. It would sort of defeat the full intent of working together, public and private, coming together and having a uniform look and feel and function for an entire area. But I don't have a direct answer for you.
Right.
That's what would happen.
I think that's the only thing that scares me a little bit is that I agree 100% with what you said. The only thing that worries me is that the city has the mechanism to pay for their part.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever that is. And
I think she already said it, though. If this is passed and the city decides they're not going to pay for any of it, it falls back on the developer.
That's now,
Because that's the current
that's not how I read this.
That's the current requirement for any zone.
But, and I'm talking about if we approve this and the city says we're going to take the public street part or the public portion part, that's going to be the burden of the city. That worries me a little bit that, you know, if we develop, and we'll discuss for or against whatever later, but if we develop, the developer goes in and does a really nice job, meets all the standards and everything like that, we got the same city street that he's got to drive down. That part, because the portion of the city part, the street part is going to be the city's no matter what, correct? This street.
Still the public right of way.
The maintenance of the current standard of the street, yes.
Yeah.
Until the city council determines and they decide whether or not the city is going to be wholly responsible of everything within the right of way.
Right.
When development occurs adjacent.
And that's what I'm a little worried about, is burdening the city with the restriction that the city may or may not, regardless of the overall plan, just involving the burden of the city improvements on the street. Are we burdening something that we can't pay for on that portion?
Let me ask you a question, Paula. Somebody earlier mentioned that, so the bid district that's downtown, that's a zoning, right?
It is a special purpose overlay.
Okay.
There's underlying zoning, and then there's the overlay on top of it. So it is an additional set of regulation.
Okay, but those people have to pay into the bid district to be members of the bid district?
There is an assessment to the properties that are located within the business improvement district.
Okay.
That is correct.
So does this, I know it's not mentioned in this document, but could that be part of the financing for this, is that there would be an assessment to everybody in this, whether you're developing or not, to gather funds to do some of the improvements?
That is a financing option that is available, and I will just let y'all know that the entire area, and actually a greater area than what is covered by the corridor redevelopment plan and this proposed form-based code, was brought together a few years back after the downtown bid was put into place. And conversation was had with those property owners, and there were a couple of hundred in attendance, about a second or third business improvement district for the Strip, Campus Corner area, affecting some of the Greek areas, and on up to, I'm trying to recall correctly if it went all the way up to Hall of Fame area. But that has been in conversation previously. It has not gone anywhere. But yes, that is one of the many financing options that are available.
Okay.
And that was that current property owners who choose not to redevelop may be assessed a fee to help offset the cost.
I really hate to get into financing because we have not even evaluated all of the options that are available. But from the downtown business improvement district, the way it functions is every property located within that business improvement district pays the assessment based on a pretty lengthy formula. Whether they're a residential house or they are a bank, City of Stillwater pays, Payne County pays. Even though we are not a taxed entity, we do pay into that business improvement district assessment.
The only thing that concerns me about that is we have made the statement that it will not affect anybody who doesn't redevelop their property right now. And that does affect them.
Well, let me clarify that. The adoption of what is before you this evening is completely different from a financing package that may be applied to the area. It is a different consideration. The form-based codes that are replacing the 8 zoning districts that are out there existing, just the zoning component application that you see before you tonight should not have any impact to individual properties unless that property owner chooses to make some change to that property that would trigger it to kick in.
And how much change would they have to make to the property to enact, to be considered redevelopment? We're talking about a change in payment.
It says in here, I think, it talks about minor site plans, or minor site plan amendments being a change of less than 5% of the gross, is that right? Less than 5% of the gross floor area?
That actually would be anything that was already falling under the form-based code. If they wanted to change slight changes to it, that's when that would trigger in.
Okay.
Typically, what triggers a compliance with a new code is if you have a change of use where additional parking is required and you got to build a parking lot, you're making a change. If you have a change of use where all you're doing is moving in a desk to an interior, you may be repainting the interior, little to no exterior change at all is needed, then typically, even under our current regulations, that does not trigger an outside analysis and adjustment. We have had some developments in town that they just want to put in a drive-through window in their business. They don't have to bring the water and the sewer and the street or their parking lot up to code. All they have to do is propose what they're doing and indicate whatever requirements that drive-through window will affect. So there is still flexibility in our regulations. But there's not if you remove one brick and put, stucco in, that's got to be full compliance. We are not that detailed in this. We have a lot of opportunity with this to really evaluate developers' proposals when they come to the city. Instead of you got to plant 5 tall trees and 3 short ones and put in 18 parking spaces that are 9 by 20. They may have something that they want to do with their property. And we believe that this form-based code does allow more flexibility. It's not as hard as the current zoning regulations are. And that may scare some developers, thinking that staff has an opportunity to take a look at it and just have discussions with them. It may encourage some others.
And if OSU, like they're already doing the Performing Arts Center that's within this area, and there'll probably be other projects that they'll have, they can still do whatever they want. Because they don't follow under, our zoning codes, whether it's form-based code or utility zones or, it's still their project, so it doesn't have to fit into the architectural scheme.
Oklahoma State University is exempt from some of the requirements of city law. They are not exempt from other requirements of city law. And the requirements of the city that they are not exempt from still apply. No matter how the zoning designation is operated or anything else, or what it's called.
For example, since I work at OSU and am involved in the Performing Arts Center, we've already agreed and we have a joint agreement with the city in terms of a stormwater permit. So we will be providing proper stormwater studies, providing stormwater detention, all those different features. We'll be tying into the City of Stillwater sanitary sewer, so we'll do a full study of that and make sure we're not overloading the city's sanitary sewer. If we're doing something have to do on-site or downstream improvements, then yes, we'll be doing that like any other developer.
But what I'm saying is, if you want to put all the parking out front, you can do that. Whereas this plan
yes,
says
but
you need
but
to
we're
all
not
park.
going to be doing that.
Well, I'm just
but
I'm
yes,
saying
I will.
Did Nigel get that?
He's on record.
We believe that Oklahoma State University and the City of Stillwater are good neighbors, and we have worked together very diligently over the last several years, yes, this right now is a 75-foot height limit. Right now, we're planning the vast majority of the PAC to be under this, but we have a fly-off that'll be a few feet over it. We're planning to put a parking garage behind the PAC, so it fits into the intent of this. We're planning to put wide sidewalks around it, so we'll work together.
One other question. The citizen, what was it, citizen advisory group for this?
Mm-hmm.
Did you have people that own property in this area on that group?
Good question.
Were there some people that on that group that are property owners in this area? I guess, did I say that correctly?
Yes. That's a good question.
don't know.
I never asked that question of them.
Okay.
I didn't interrupt council, but my question has
Well, sorry.
it hasn't been answered.
Okay. Well, let's see. I'm sorry, we've closed the public hearing, sir. Okay. Any other questions for staff? All right. Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Commissioners, discussion?
I would like to suggest, when is the appropriate time to bring up what we want in the Transect map change? Is it now?
Next one.
Next meeting?
That's the next meeting.
Okay.
The regulating.
I should listen better, right?
Oh, I did want to remind you that the staff did want to have a change in that lighting provision. So if you feel like it should be amended, that you may have to choose, and you want to accept staff findings, choose the appropriate alternative.
So if we want to go with your recommendation, which I do on the lighting standards,
Okay.
then we need to do alternative 2
If you want to recommend approval,
with the identified changes being the changes in the light standard.
yes.
Okay.
I'll make a comment. I don't know
Go
if you have
ahead and
any
make a
questions.
comment.
Shoot, we're on the comments.
I don't think anyone sitting up here, staff, audience, knows what will happen with this, knows the ultimate outcome of this, knows what it's going to do to property values, what it won't do to property values. I think one thing that encourages me is less restrictive, more restrictive, I don't know. Overall beautification of it, there definitely are more beautification requirements. And personally, as a business owner, if I have a property next to a more attractive property, I think that helps my property values. Property tax won't help our sewers much, won't help our city streets much, but sales tax will, and sales tax revenue will. And if you can encourage development, residential, whatever, commercial into an area that would increase sales tax revenue, it's going to increase the opportunity in that area. Do I sit up here and know? I don't have a clue if it's going to be better, if it's going to be worse. I like the idea of it. I like the process of it. There are some concerns I have with paying portion of it, the more importantly, the city side. I'm always concerned on the developer side. That's the side I live on every day. So the development side concerns me, but the developer has that choice. If it doesn't make sense at the end of the day, the developer's not going to put the money into that. He's not going to buy 20 houses and say, this doesn't make financial sense for me, but I'm going to do it. The city side worries me a little bit. If we implement something that burdens our city with city streets, city sewer, and we put that requirement on them, that is a concern going forward as a city. I think that it's great. I think it's beautiful. I think it could have a lot of potential, but those are kind of the things that worry me just a little bit.
I'll make a few comments, as you know I usually do.
I like it.
I think this gives more flexibility to the landowner. Our previous codes, it was residential or commercial or industrial, and that fits in many areas and is done very well for many cities across the nation, does very well for us in certain areas of this city. In this area, which is a transition between Oklahoma State University and downtown, I think it needs multi-purposes, multi-uses. So we can have commercial uses on the front of the property with apartments behind. Maybe it's over. I think that it's been shown that having the parking in the back gives a more friendly area for people to walk. I think the beautification standard is a burden to the developer. It will add additional costs to most developments, but I think overall is needed in this particular area in the redevelopment. Getting to the public right-of-way. I worked for the city of Tulsa for 20 years, and I've been involved in a lot of public right-of-way. I'm hoping that that when we have this redevelopment, the developer's still responsible for the sanitary sewer, the stormwater, and the water, because I think if they're doing development that causes significant improvements in those areas, they ought to pay 100% for that. The street area and the redesign of the streets for the sidewalks and for the biking and the pedestrians and street trees and like that, maybe it ought to be 100% 50% public may be a little bit different than that. But if it's 100% public and we don't get around to it for several years, in my mind, our rezoning, the new use of the zoning, has a much greater benefit than what we have today. And if we minimize and just do widening of sidewalks in the area, which would be a minimal public cost, I think all the other features make it worth it to me. And that's my position on this.
My comments on this, I do understand why this area of town was selected. Having a connection from downtown to OSU has always been discussed, and it makes sense to me. I've also seen over the past 10 years, I've seen some older places torn down in this area, and individuals have built something that's really just a newer version of what was there, and it's not really that aesthetically appealing. So I totally understand some of the architectural and the landscaping requirements to beautify this area. I'm for all of that. I understand, like others have said, that it would be some expense for that, but the trade-offs are it's going to be a lot nicer place, and you would think there would be more visitors, more people wanting to live there, more people coming to Stillwater to spend money in those areas. I do have concerns about the financing, but that's really not up for us tonight. That's for the city council. That won't even come to us. So that will be their burden. And I definitely think that, in my opinion, if there's going to be streets that are very decorative and eco-friendly or pedestrian-friendly, bike path-friendly, lots of trees, lots of other things that we don't normally have right now with our streets, I believe the public should bear some of those costs. But overall, I think that yes, there's a lot of, others have stated tonight that there's a lot of rules here, or a lot of maybe infringement on their rights for architectural decision making, and I get that. But I also feel for the guy that spends a lot of money and makes something look really nice, and have somebody next to him spend nothing at all and it look not like very nice. And so I think consistency in this area is important.
I have a few reservations that I've already stated. One other thing that does concern me is that with the percentage of landlords in the area, how many houses are used as rentals, that the possibility of those homeowners that use them as rentals not taking initiative to repaint their house, re-roof their house, do a small change that now would enact or would be considered a redevelopment. I do have some concern that if they want to make a small change or do something like that that would improve their property, that now they may refrain from doing that and just all out let their property go until the city forces them to do something because they don't want to reenact, or they don't want to enact the redevelopment zoning that we're putting on, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I never thought about that.
From my perspective, I don't see this. In other words, if they want to repaint, I don't see that changing the requirement for the development.
I agree. I don't think maintenance items are more or less going to trigger that compliance with the form-based code. So I think it would take something more significant to do that. And I'm not going to rehash. I've got similar to Mr. Buchert and Mr. Barth, the whole thing. I like the idea. I think it's got a lot of positives. The finance piece still concerns me, but like Chairman said, that's for a future meeting. So what we have to decide here tonight is whether we pass this on or not. Make that recommendation.
The microphone's not on.
I would like to say thank you to Paula and the staff that have put this together. It's a bold idea with a lot of possibilities, and I think that it took a lot of effort, and we sure appreciate the effort you all put into this.
You know, I kind of listen to this, and, you know, as a business owner that have been here in Stillwater for 19 years, I know there are some things that are scary about this, but I think really the whole thing, I'm just kind of geeked about it. It just sounds like it would really be good for our community, and it would better our community, and I think it just make us all proud, and I think it would just help everybody hopefully to want to better their property, to stand up to your neighbors, and hopefully that area would be just something we'd want to share. And I just think it's a great thing. I think it's real exciting, especially after hearing what everybody said. I know the homeowners are nervous, but I just think there's just not a negative to this, my opinion.
I will make a motion then. I move that we accept staff and city's committee findings and recommend approval of the proposed form-based codes with identified changes for lighting.
I second.
All right, so there's been a motion and a second to accept this and recommend approval of this form-based code with identified changes for lighting.
Yes.
Okay. Let's vote. And that recommendation moves forward with 6 votes yes. Next item on the agenda is approval of the meeting summary for the regular meeting of Tuesday, March 17th, 2015.
Move for approval?
Second. Motion and a second. Let's vote on that. And that is approved with 6 votes yes. Miscellaneous items from staff for discussion and possible action. Next Planning Commission meeting will be Tuesday, April 21st, 2015. If there are no other comments, the Chair would entertain a motion for adjournment.
I so move.
Second. Let's vote on that. And we are adjourned.
I know.